Hey fam! We're back with another banger. What if Naruto was adopted by a legendary ninja? So before we start, if you are craving adult mature content, join my Patreon now, link are in the description box. Alright, enough talk, let's fire it up. Through the village streets of Konoha, shouts and curses rang out in the night air, along with the subtle sounds of a child's cries for help. A young 5-year-old boy known around town as Demon Child, that thing, and monster, was yet again on one of his daily, running from a mob, sprints. Said boy, whose name is Naruto Uzumaki, had been subject to these runs for every day of the past week. Since the caretakers at the orphanage decided that they were tired of beating him and simply threw him into the street. Why chase a 5-year-old child? Simple, said child is a demon vessel, a container for one of the most feared of demon lords, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and said mobs cannot see the child as a container, rather they see the young boy as the demon reincarnated. So said boy is destined to live a life of prejudice and pain. Unbeknownst to him, tonight will mark a momentous occasion in said boy's life. Whether it is for the better remains to be seen. This is his story. Naruto raced down the streets of Konoha, his legs burned, his lungs were screaming at him to stop. To do so, however, would certainly be a stupid decision. So he ran, the cries for his blood growing louder and more numerous. He ran, bottles and rocks landing around him just missing their destination. He ran, tears beginning to fall from his eyes, as this may be the day he can't outrun the hate. His feet are now moving on their own, carrying him towards his one haven, towards the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi, the only one who has ever truly cared for him. Then it happened, he tripped, he stumbled on his own 2 damn feet and he fell, jagged pebbles tearing into his flesh as his body came crashing down onto the earth. He lay there for a second, pain racking his body, every inch of him screaming to give up. He turned around to face the crowd just in time to catch a rock to the temple. The world blurred in pain, he can only stare into the now slowly approaching crowd, stalking him like an animal. The taunts and threats grew louder, his cries of why, only serving to incite the crowd even more. Objects rain upon him, rocks, bottles, even kunai and shuriken from the shinobi in the crowd. That's not what hurts the most, it's the people who get creative with their torture that really hurt him, those who have practiced inflicting pain on him, the ones who heat the kunai so that they cut into his shoulders just a tad easier. The old ladies who run out of their homes to throw boiling water on him, those are the ones he truly fears. And they call him monster. He lays there ready for the end. It was better this way, at least when he died he'd be away from it all, right? He watches as a man walks up to the front of the mob with one huge looking shuriken. He simply does what they all do, smiles and laughs at his pain. He calls him a demon and himself a hero for killing him. Naruto's heard it all before and finds that this time he can't cry as the man unleashes the shuriken. It seems that it has finally happened, he has run out of tears. It seems awkward to him that the sound he's gonna hear when he dies is a cheer from the crowd. He closes his eyes and they cheer. Over the cheer, however, a voice rings out. Sweden. Suijin heki. Water barrier wall. A wall of water intercepts the shuriken meant for the boy, and only one thought runs through his mind before he drifts off into unconsciousness: safety. It takes a second for the crowd to realize the demon boy isn't dead. Needless to say, they aren't happy. A man appears over the now slumbering child. The first thing they notice is his mask. A customized hunter nin mask, the porcelain mask painted charcoal gray with the silhouette of an bird painted in black on the forehead with black talon marks on the cheeks covered the stranger's face. Spikes of jet black hair lay low on his head jutting back. He wore a dark reed long sleeve shirt under a black leather trench coat with its sleeves cut off at the elbow. Black baggy pants with multiple pockets and black boots rounded out his attire. If his mask was the first thing one would notice, the last thing one would remember were the 2 scythes that he had attached to his back. Their handles were shorter than most, which was probably why he had 2 dark blood red handles led to deadly looking black blades. His mere presence shook the resolve of many of the villagers. What the hell are you doing? He stated in a cold, calm tone that unnerved everyone who heard it. Doing this village and all of mankind a favor by killing the Kyuubi. shouted the Chunin that had thrown the oversized shuriken. Cheers of approval rang out through the crowd, that is except for some of the older ninja who were beginning to cower as realization dawned on them. They screwed up. Trying to murder an innocent child is a service to mankind? The masked figure asked. This boy is not the Kyuubi, only its prison, its container. When shouts of denial and more calls for the death of the demon and the demon lover, the masked man flashed through some hand signs. Perhaps an example is needed. Suiru no Jutsu. Water prison. The water that had made up the barrier wrapped its way around the Chunin and formed a sphere encompassing him. The masked man flashed over towards the Chunin with his hand on the prison. Now fools, is this imbecile, the water that makes up his prison? The onlookers only shook their head dumbly. Now let me make this as easy as possible. The boy is no more the Kyuubi than the fool is the water. In other words, you monsters have been torturing the only thing that keeps the Kyuubi from picking up where he left off. The man's yell still held the tone of utmost calm. Leave now before I execute you all for attempted murder of a Konoha citizen. Demon container or not, he is still a citizen. Most of the villagers scrambled to their homes, some with regret dancing on their faces as thoughts of their torturing a child sickened them. Others just planning to wait until next time. Those that remained of the mob were all shinobi, mostly genin and chunin. From inside his watery prison, the assailant demanded to know the identity of his capture. He was answered by one of the older chunin, a look of sheer awe and terror on his face. It's the Nadoka SS Seifukusha, Quiet Conqueror. The Nadoka Seifukusha has returned. The elder chunin fled in what seemed to the rest as a strange mixture of fear and elation. The genin who were currently there, eyes widened considerably. Was it true? The man who was rumored to have done to Kumo what the Yondaime did to Iwa, the one who was said to have been able to fight on equal ground with the fourth, was standing before them. And they pissed him off. Needless to say, the group disbanded in a flash, fearing the legendary Quiet Conqueror. The masked man simply tilted his head at the group before releasing the water prison, only to knock out the chunin with a chop to the back of his head. He threw the incapacitated attacker over his shoulder and walked over and gently lifted the broken, bleeding body of Naruto into his arms and began racing along the rooftops towards the Hokage tower. That old fool had a hell of a lot of explaining to do. The Sandaime Hokage was currently in the middle of a meeting with all available Junin and Academy personnel. He was currently listening to his son Osamu's proposal to have at least basic battlefield stratagem added to the curriculum of the Academy. Sarutobi hated these kinds of meetings. Sure, they were important, but they took forever, and those that didn't have suggestions usually just sat there bored to tears. One of the Academy teachers was starting their counter-argument to Osamu's when, in a swirl of leaves, an Anbukunochi with dark hair and a cat mask appeared in front of the Hokage's desk. Hokage-sama, we are receiving reports that there has been an incident, sir. What happened? Where is he? Why wasn't I told? Normally the Hokage would have been calmer in his reaction, but with a good portion of the non-Naruto hating shinobi here in his office, the chances of the boy escaping unscathed were very low. Remain calm, Sarutobi-sama. A voice called from the shadows of the Hokage's balcony. Just then the unconscious body of Chunin was hurled into the room. The shinobi in the room tensed, ready for the slightest provocation. You have some explaining to do, Sarutobi, especially after what I just bared witness to. What would he say if he saw things this way? The Hokage's eyes widened a bit before narrowing at the shadows. Who are you? And what have you done with Naruto? The figure only sighed and stepped into the light of the office. Surprisingly, it was the cat-masked Anbu that reacted first. Akahata-senpai. At this the eyes of most of the Junin and other older ninjas widened substantially, while some of the younger ninja remained clueless, and the eye of one ninja flashed with anger. Akahata-senpai, it's really you, you're back? Indeed, Neko-chan, cat, I am back, and from the looks of the way this child was treated, just in time. That's no child, sir, it's a monster, an abomination, declared one of the Chunin instructors of the academy. His declaration made many of the Junin's blood boil, especially that of Hitaki Kakashi. However, they would let it slide. Far be it from them to attack another shinobi in the presence of the Hokage. The man known as Akahata, however, had other plans. He slowly began stalking towards the Chunin, handing the still slumbering child to the cat-masked Kunoichi. Before anyone could register what was happening, Akahata appeared in front of the Chunin with his right hand grasping his face. The Chunin cried out in pain as he was dragged by his face to the balcony. A sharp crack could be heard as the man's head protector buckled under the pressure of Akahata's grip. The occupants of the room watched in awe as Akahata lifted the now squirming Chunin off his feet. Such insolence! Arashi would have wanted this done. With that, he flung the Chunin off the balcony, sending him crashing into one of the lower rooftops. He then proceeded to walk back into the room like nothing happened. Sarutobi-sama explained this. He said as he took Naruto from the Anbu. Before the Hokage could get around to answering, a dog-masked Anbu charged him. "You got a lot of nerve showing your face around here. You damn deserter," he cried as he whipped out a kunai and swung at the object of his loathing. Akahata ducked under the swipe of the kunai with Naruto still asleep in his arms, and delivered a chop to the throat of the Anbu with his free and making him bend forward in clutching his throat. As he sprung up from his ducking position, he brought his right knee into the face of his attacker, cracking his mask and sending him reeling backwards. The Anbu recovered in time to raise his kunai for an overhead strike. This move, however, was matched by Akahata, who spun around, reaching behind his back to retrieve one of his scythes. As he whirled around, he sliced the kunai in half like it was paper. He let the scythe twirl in his hand and caught the neck of the scythe in his other hand. He then proceeded to cross-check the Anbu in the face with the handle of the scythe, sending him to the floor in a heap. "Bad dog," was all the triumphant Akahata said as he refitted his scythe on his back. "What is the meaning of this, Kakashi?" the Hokage bellowed in a rare angry tone. Me? What about him? He just waltzes in after half a decade and I'm the one that has explaining to do? Be that as it may, Kakashi, how do you expect him to explain anything if you're trying to kill him? Not to mention the fact that he was holding Naruto while you went on your little rampage," the Hokage reprimanded. Kakashi simply lowered his head in shame, muttering what could only be assumed were apologies. "Now that is over with, Akahata, you do have some explaining to do. First, let's start off with why you haven't been seen for 5 years. Sarutobi-sama, I've spent the last 5 years in an exile at the orders of the Yondaime. I do not know why or how he got it approved by the council, but one day 5 years ago he hands me an official mission to leave the Land of Fire for no less than 5 years, and that if I returned to Konoha anytime before then that I would be punished to his fullest capability, and that I would not be allowed to obtain amnesty for any of my clan members if some were ever found." Murmurs of disbelief grew in the room, and once again it was Kakashi who spoke up. "You damn liar. Why would he do that?" Akahata reached into one of his pocket and pulled out a scroll and threw it at Kakashi, who proceeded to read it. "Those are the exact mission orders I received, Kakashi-san. He made me promise on Nozomi's honor that I wouldn't come back until 5 years was up. Even after the Kyuubi attack, I was not to look back. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. No blade can cut that deep. Knowing that your loved ones are in the fight of their lives and you can do nothing about it. That being said, Sarutobi-sama, can you explain to me why the first sight I saw upon my return was the 5-year-old savior of this village on the verge of being disemboweled by a mob of both civilians and shinobi? It was an unfortunate event, Akahata-san. Just how commonplace is this unfortunate event, considering the eyes of the child spoke such a familiarity with the events? It should be illegal. It is illegal, but one cannot change the hearts of the people. Be that as it may, one can give a child, especially one of his importance, the protection he both needs and deserves. I cannot watch him 24/7, Akahata-san. Be that as it may, protection takes on many forms, such as sending him to live in a more pleasant village. No, I could never allow that. Arashi wanted the boy to be seen as a hero and raised in the village he loved. Enough. Arashi wanted a lot of things, but seeing as you failed at one thing, why would you keep trying? You're essentially torturing the boy. I fain think that Arashi would approve of your failure, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi visibly winced at the words. He had known he had failed his successor, but to have it blatantly pointed out by someone who would know how his successor would have felt, stung. Most of the other shinobi didn't know what to think. It didn't seem right for Akahata to talk in such a manner to the Hokage. However, The fact that he is as strong if not stronger than the Hokage, as well as the fact that many of them felt exactly the same way as he did, kept many of them from saying anything. I can understand your frustration, Akahata-san, however for right now everything is for the bees. The Hokage could not finish his thought as the splintering sound erupted throughout the room, followed by a loud crash. Everyone's eyes widened when the dust settled to reveal a shaking Akahata Ryushi standing over the remains of the Hokage's desk, a scythe in hand. Don't even think about finishing that thought. A 5-year-old child being hunted by a damn animal, while his failure of a caretaker thinks it's for the best. If I didn't know that the council played a major role in your failure, I would make sure Arashi heard you. Please, for mercy, Sarutobi. As of today, anyone who causes harm to this child mentally, physically, emotionally, in any way whatsoever, better pray that the heavens have mercy on them, because I sure as hell won't. He pulled another scroll out of his pocket and pricked the sleeping Naruto's finger with the point of his scythe. He smeared the blood of Naruto on one of 3 seals placed on the scroll. After a brief flash of light, the seal deactivated and Akahata smiled brightly as he pulled the sleeping form of Naruto deeper into his arms. It is him, thank God. Arashi, I'll die before I let them break him. On the honor of both you and Nozomi, I swear it. He whispered just loud enough for Sarutobi and the still-downed Kakashi to hear it. The two that looked like it was going to be disastrous ended up with Naruto finding something they knew he always wanted: family. Akahata-san, I assume you're going to be staying at your house this evening? Yes, but first I have some companions waiting for me at the gate that wish to seek asylum here in Konoha. Although one is still technically a ninja of Konoha, the other is a child. If it is alright with you, can we let them sleep tonight and you can meet them in the morning? Akahata simply did a few hand signs and slammed his hand into the ground. A poof of smoke erupted in the middle of the room. When it cleared, a hawk the size of a horse stood there eyeing its surroundings. Akahata-san, may I ask why you have summoned me? The bird asked in a calm and neutral tone. 7. My companions are just outside of the north gate. Find them and take them to my home. I trust you remember where it is? Hi. The hawk answered before gracefully drifting out the window. Don't worry, Hokage-sama, they are both completely trustworthy. Akahata said, knowing what most of the shinobi were thinking. That being said, Hokage-sama, I would like to request you call an emergency council meeting. May I ask what it would be about? The Hokage asked, raising an eyebrow. Naruto. My plans on taking him under my wing, as well as the contents of this scroll. I was to read it before you and the council once I got back, he said as he held up the partially unsealed scroll. I understand they are important people, but I really don't think Arashi would have told me to do this if it wasn't important, nay? No, I suppose he wouldn't. He then turned his attention to the gathered shinobi. All right, everybody, meeting adjourned. He then snapped his fingers and a team of Anbu appeared, informed the council members of an emergency meeting in 1 hour, dismissed. After a chorus of "hi" rang out, they were gone in a swirl of leaves. At this time the only occupants in the room were Akahata, Sarutobi, Naruto, and surprisingly, the cat-masked Anbu Kunoichi, as well as the Junin known as Hayate Gecko. Is there something I can help you two with? I actually think they have dealings with me, Hokage-sama, Akahata stated matter-of-factly. Permission to speak freely, senpai? The Anbu asked. When have you ever needed permission, Neko-chan? A lighter tone slipping into his voice. Senpai. The Anbu cried out before enveloping Akahata in a flying hug, dragging him and by default the sleeping Naruto to the ground. Senpai, you don't know how much we missed you. How could you just do that? No goodbye or anything. We've been engaged for years, hoping that you could be at the wedding. Oh senpai. Azuki Yugo was not one someone would normally consider an emotional person. However, this was her senpai, the man who had taken the fledgling Yugo under his wing and gave her all the support she needed, being one of the few kunoichi in Anbu. So one could not blame her for now sobbing tears of utter joy into the chest of her beloved senpai. She could only sigh in contentment as he slowly stroked her dark purple hair. Engaged, is it? I guess that means Hayate has taken care of you? Yugo could only nod slightly into his chest. Yes, see, Hayate was interrupted by a sequence of coughs. I mean yes sir, I have, and I always will. Hayate could only smile slightly before falling into another coughing fit. He had met Akahata about 7 years ago. It was Akahata who managed to pull a Chunin named Hayate out of a gas-filled pit. It was this gas that had damaged Hayate's lungs beyond repair. However, thanks to Akahata, he survived the trap, and with a few good months of Tai and Kenjutsu training as well as his pull with the Yondaime, Akahata was able to get Hayate back into the shinobi ranks. In the end, it was the mutual respect of Akahata that led to Hayate and Yugo becoming friends and eventually lovers. Due to this, both Hayate and Yugo held the Quiet Conqueror in the highest regards. Akahata-san, we should probably be going. The council will be angry if you're late to the meeting you called, the Hokage said, breaking up the reunion. Yes, Hokage-sama. Yu-chan, Hayate-kun, would you two mind watching over Naruto for me while I deal with the trash? No problem at all, Akahata-senpai, they both chorused out. Thank you. And with that, Sarutobi and Akahata, the two strongest ninja the village hidden in the leaves could offer, headed to the council chambers. The doors to the council hall opened and in walked the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. He could tell just by the way the council were glaring either at him or at each other that the mood was far from perfect. I thank you all for coming at such short notice. No problem, Hokage-sama, drawled Shikaku Nara. Although I would like to know what was so important, he continued. Murmurs of agreement could be heard. Yes, Hokage-sama, what is so worthy of the esteemed council's time? Hiyashi Hyuga demanded. Does the name, Nodoka Seifukusha, ring any bells? The Hokage could only smirk as the entire shinobi portion of the council stiffened dramatically. Hokage, don't play games, you know very well that every shinobi has heard of him. What does the deserter have to do with anything? Fugaku Uchiha sneered. Well, Fugaku, I have recently learned that the Quiet Conqueror, as he is known, is indeed not a deserter but rather was exiled under the guise of a mission by the Yondaime and this very council. The Hokage steadied himself for the explosion of responses and was not disappointed. After a few minutes of screams and demands, he pulled out the mission scroll and passed it to the council for their examination. Well, I'll be damned, and here we all thought he was nothing but a coward. I wonder what the Yondaime had in mind, though. Inochi Yamanka said after examining the scroll. Hokage-sama, where did you get this though? Unless, is he? Shuza Akamichi wondered aloud. Actually, I can answer that as well. Come on in. The council members collectively took a breath as the door opened and in walked Akahata Ryushi, the Quiet Conqueror himself. A man that could very well be stronger than the Yondaime, considering he now had 5 years to grow since they last sparred. Hyuga Hiyashi and Sume Inuzuka glanced at each other and nodded slightly before returning their sights on the legend in front of them. Both of them, being ex-teammates of the Yondaime and friends of both him and his wife, knew Akahata well, and if he really was back, things were defiantly going to change. Hello, Akahata-san, it has been quite a while, hasn't it? Sume said sweetly. This caused many amongst the council to grimace, thinking that she was already trying to get in such a powerful person's good graces. Though they couldn't blame her, any one of the major clans would love to have such a shinobi as an ally. Indeed it has, Lady Sume. So Akahata-san, I doubt you called a meeting just to get reacquainted. What is it that we could do for you? Hyuga Hiyashi asked, his voice noticeably lacking the tone of arrogance it usually holds. Why? Simply because Hyuga Hiyashi was not stupid. He knew very well that to anger the masked shinobi standing before him meant trouble. Akahata Ryushi was simply put the only man other than the Yondaime that Hyuga Hiyashi would proudly say he respected as a superior ninja. Indeed, Hiyashi-san. I come before the council tonight to discuss the treatment of one Uzumaki Naruto. The council hall was dead quiet, though most of the shinobi who had some interaction with Akahata picked up the angry tones in his voice. One thought drifted throughout their minds: oh God, we might very well die tonight. And just what is it that you would like to discuss concerning it? The clan head of the Harunos sneered as he lifted a cup of tea to his lips. His answer came in the form of a senbon needle that struck the cup, shattering it and spilling its contents on the now shocked clan head. That is what I'd like to discuss. Why are the supposed wise council picking on a child? Why are the greatest minds of Konoha deliberately disrespect that this child be viewed and treated as a hero? I would expect such ignorance out of common villagers, but to see such folly from the leaders of the village Arashi loved so much is sickening. Akahata's calm yet thoroughly enraged voice cut through the council hall. "It is no child," cried one of the civilian councillors. "It is a weapon at best and a sin against humanity at worst." His rant was cut off when he was hit by a storm of killer intent from Akahata, the Sandame, and surprisingly the Akamichi, Yamanaka, and Nara clan heads. "Shut you mouth, if all you're gonna spew is foolishness," drawled Shikaku Nara. "He's just a kid. The only problem I see is the fact that what happens if he loses control." "I understand your fears, Nara-san. However, aren't you all just working on a self-fulfilling prophecy?" Akahata questioned. "What do you mean?" "Well, the way the village treats him, what's to truly stop anyone who has at least decent motivational skills to turn him against us? Hell, if the village goes too far and breaks him down mentally, what's to stop the Kyuubi from taking over? Shouldn't we instead focus on letting him know he's appreciated and that he has our support? Treat him in a way that would make him want to protect this village as much as his father did." "You bring up interesting points, Akahata-san," came the emotionless tone of Shibi Aburame. "Tell me, Akahata-san, why would someone as esteemed as yourself care about one such as Uzumaki?" The other council elder and teammate of the Sandame, Kaharu, questioned. "It is simple, Kaharu-san. The child did not ask to be the hero he is. He did not ask to be hated by the very people he saved. And yes, he did save this village, whether you want to admit it or not. Everyone who declares this boy not a hero is saying that if the Yondaime had not sealed the demon into the boy, they would have been able to rid the beast by some other means. That this child's chance at a normal life was sacrificed needlessly, that indeed they could have handled the situation better than Arashi. If you cannot say that, then you have no right whatsoever to think that you can see this boy for what he is better than Arashi could. Arashi called him hero, and his legacy, so shall I, and anyone who says otherwise can debate it with Arashi when their time comes, and if anyone plans on harming the child in any way, I will send you to Arashi sooner than you would like." Many of the members of the council lowered their heads, some in shame, many in thought. Could they doubt the word of the fourth so easily? Had they really been destroying the life of their hero? Arashi did indeed declare the child a hero. Were they really anyone to call him a liar? "That is nonsense, Akahata-san. Who do you think you are to lecture us? To tell us that that thing is any more than a monster? To even prey upon the memories of the Yondaime for the likes of that filth? Have you no respect?" the Haruno clan head bellowed. Other members around him began inching away, especially those who knew of Akahata's bonds with the fourth. "That monster is no hero. If he were, he would have family. No mother or father would skip out raising a hero. Instead, the Yondaime found the child cast away like the trash he is. He is garbage, fathered by a bastard that had a whore for a wife. Simp." The pink-haired man's words were put to a stop when he found his neck being crushed in the vice-like grip of Akahata. "You garbage," Akahata roared as he slammed his head repeatedly into the face of the Haruno. After the fifth time, Akahata lifted the man by the throat and slammed him to the floor. He then retrieved both his scythes and placed them on each side of the bleeding man's neck. "Now listen, worm. All of you listen closely. You want to know who I am to tell you about the Yondaime's will. I am the brother of his wife. As for the boy, if I ever hear you speak in the least bit negative about my dear nephew again, I will send you and your entire family to hell." A collective gasp was heard throughout the room. "That's right, you impudent fools. I was telling the absolute truth about the boy being the Yondaime's legacy. The boy that you've treated like trash, the boy that no one deserves to even have the pleasure of knowing. The boy you cast out is the closest thing that this village will ever have to royalty. The boy's true name is Naruto Uzumaki Kazama," Akahata roared. The color left the faces of every council member in the room. Silence reigned save for the muttered curses of Hyuga Hiyashi and the sobs of Sume Inuzuka, who had apparently broken into hysterics at the news. Akahata produced a scroll from his pocket, bit his finger and rubbed some blood on the seal, deactivating it. He then walked over to Sarutobi, who proceeded to do the same thing to the last seal on the scroll. "Before any of you can call me a liar, this letter should serve as all the proof you need. It was sealed by 3 blood seals that could only be unlocked by myself, Sarutobi-sama, and Naruto. He unfurled the scroll and began reading. To my dearest and most trusted friend, Akahata Fist, things first, I apologize for forcing you to leave. I just had to make sure at least some of Konoha's power remained intact after I'm gone. Friend, if you are reading this, then that means that you're back in the village. Old man Sarutobi is still alive, and my legacy is still safe. Since this is so, I can now safely tell you that the other letter that you were to open, if you couldn't open this one, were orders for you to execute the entire council, but since my boy is still alive, we won't have to resort to that. At this, the faces of many of the clan heads paled visibly and a knowing smirk flashed upon the aging Hokage's lips. Not knowing what the big deal is, one of the civilian members of the council decided to speak up. Ha! Such a fool. Like one man could execute all of us. Am I right? Cheers of support came from the other civilians, however they quieted quickly when they noticed the shinobi members of the council remained quiet. Did the fool not just see what happened to the Haruno? A different voice rang out. Who said he'd be alone? Everyone turned to see a new speaker emerge from the shadows. You obviously don't know who Akahata is, do you? Seeing no answer forthcoming, he continued. Despite your lack of knowledge, make no mistake that Akahata Ryushi is a cage-level ninja. Most people don't know this, but the only reason he wasn't considered for the job of Yondaime is because he respected Arashi too much to even risk stealing Arashi's dream. The civilian councilors now paled to the same degree that the clan heads had. Not to mention that most, if not all, of the Hunter Nin Corps and all of the assassination branch of the Anbu would follow him to hell and back, if only out of respect to him. This all added to the fact that it being Arashi's wish, I would have defiantly helped. That being said, the figure stepped into the light fully. Jiraiya, you really should visit more often, the Hokage stated as his perverted student walked towards him. Sorry sensei, but you know I can't stand the fall from grace this place took after Arashi's death. He paused a second to look over the form of Akahata, who stood quietly beside Sarutobi, although it looks like things are going to be set straight around here. How you doing there, Akahata? Just fine, Jiraiya-san. Now if the council is done with insulting me, I think I should continue reading. With a nod of confirmation from both Jiraiya and the Sandaime, Akahata returned to the letter. Akahata, as I've stated, my trust in you is beyond words, and that being said, Akahata, I write to you to ask for 3 last wishes. I can never repay you for these wishes, however, so they are completely voluntary. First, I ask that you take care of my child. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that once the world knows who he is, he will have many enemies, both foreign and probably some from Konoha. Protect him using any force necessary, as I know that there will be attempts made on his life, be it for his being the vessel of the Kyuubi or because my bullet veins. Second, take care of the village. I know you dislike it as much as Jiraiya-sensei and Tsunade-sama, but please, I really want my boy to grow up to be someone in the village that both I as well as Nozomi fell in love with. Finally, I ask that you take my child and raise him as your own, teach him the ways of the shinobi and the ways of honor in general. You are the only one to which I would trust my entire clan's future in. Those are my 3 wishes. I hope that you will grant them for me. This being said, I hereby enact one final edict within my right as not only the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure but as head of the Kazama clan and father of Naruto Uzumaki Kazama. I, Arashi Kazama, appoint Akahata Ryushi as legal guardian of my son and heir to the Kazama clan, Naruto Uzumaki Kazama. I appoint him status as a retainer to the Kazama clan, and as such not only will he make decisions in my seat amongst the council until my son is of age, but the council will add a new seat because for his outstanding service to Konoha and myself I hereby declare the Ryushi clan a major clan of Konohagakure no Sato. At the reading of this, hell effectively broke loose in the council halls. This is ludicrous, no one has ever even heard of the Ryushi clan, one of the civilians' councilors cried. That argument won't work, civilian, stated Jiraiya. Can you explain yourself, Jiraiya-sama? Hiyashi Hyuga stated calmly. Sure I can. The Ryushi clan was once a very powerful and wealthy clan from Hidden Mist. They were well known as a clan of expert hunter nin and assassins. The clan was brought to ruin due to the Mist bloodline hunts. So, Akahata-san, I assume you are willing to catalog your clan's bloodline limit with us, spoke Homura, the Sandame's old teammate and council elder. If it appeases the council, I will. However, I would like to give the information to the Hokage privately and let him give the information to the shinobi members of the council. I see no need for civilians to have such powerful information. The civilians were seething while the shinobi simply shrugged. However, the head of the Nara clan didn't understand. Akahata-san, people will find out eventually, you realize this. Certainly I do, Nara-san. However, in my travels I have heard rumors of at least one other survivor of my clan whom is still a child wandering somewhere. If word gets out that his or her bloodline belongs to a major clan in Konoha, the danger the child faces will skyrocket even more. The clan head simply nodded sagely. Are there any other objections? The Sandame spoke out. Some members clearly didn't like the edict as it effectively made Akahata Ryushi not only one of the most physically powerful people in Konoha but also the most powerful person politically. Unfortunately for them, there was very little they could do. Okay, Akahata-san, if there is more to the letter, let us finish this so we can get out of here. Akahata, once again, I'm sorry for forcing you to leave. Think of it as making sure that my son's future as well as the future of Konoha was safe. Sealed inside this scroll are 3 additional scrolls, 2 for Naruto for you to give when you feel he is ready, and 1 containing every vital piece of information you need to pick up where I left off. Once again, thank you, my friend. I know I'm not guaranteed you'll grant my wishes, but if I know as much as I think I do, as the man my wife calls brother, then I feel nothing but hope for my son, me and Nozomi. Cannot thank you enough, my friend, and her brother. Thank you for being the father to our child. Arashi Kazama. If that's all, I hereby declare this meeting adjourned, the Hokage announced as he walked out the door, Jiraiya following behind him. Akahata turned to leave when he noticed both Sume and Hiashi making their way towards him. Akahata-san, may we have a word with you? Hiashi asked solemnly. I'm sorry, Hiashi-san, but I really am in no mood to speak with anyone properly. The Haruno has my blood absolutely boiling and I would hate to take it out on anyone. It's understandable. However, do you happen to know where Naruto is? He's under the watchful eye of 2 very trustworthy people. I'm going to pick him up and take him home to sleep. Might we see him? Sume asked hesitantly. I apologize, Lady Sume, but he is currently unconscious due to another incident with the villagers. I found him on the verge of being disemboweled by a Fuma shuriken. I shall contact you when he regains consciousness. Good evening. You're angry with us, aren't you, Akahata? Hiashi stated guiltily. Angry? Yes, a bit. More disappointed than anything else. We're sorry, we didn't know. Could you forgive us? Sume asked gravely. Does it make a difference that you didn't know? You make it sound like you're only sorry because of who his father is. Tell me something, if this child were born to nothing more than regular commoners, would it make him any less of a hero? Would it make it okay to treat him the way he was treated if no one knew his parents? Receiving nothing in the way of an answer save for 2 lowered heads, he continued. Besides, Lady Sume, Hiashi-san, it is not my place to forgive you. It is Naruto's. If you want, when he is recovered you can visit him and on your knees ask his forgiveness. You don't seriously expect us to lower ourselves that far, do you? Hiashi asked sternly. Hisashi-san, respect is something earned, something people have seemed to have forgotten in Arashi's absence. Besides, I didn't think one could get any lower than helping to torture a 5-year-old child that happens to be the reason any of you are still alive. Hiashi visibly flinched at the words and tears began to form in Sun's eyes. When you have both received his forgiveness, then perhaps we can start over. Just know that if the boy is anything like his dear old uncle, he may be able to forgive, but he most certainly will never forget. With that, Akahata walked out the door, leaving an ashamed and distraught pair of clan heads. Hiashi, we deserved that, didn't we? Sume asked through quiet tears. We deserved worse. We should be thankful Akahata didn't have Nozomi's temper, Hiashi said with a sad smile. As he raced along the rooftops towards his home with a sleeping Naruto in his arms, Akahata could only think of the mission he'd been given. Arashi, I will make sure he becomes one of the greatest shinobi ever known, Sister, I'll do my best to make sure he is also known as one of the greatest men to have ever lived. I will see him achieve greatness, if I have to mow down every obstacle in his path. You have my word. Nozomi's legacy, he whispered as he took one last look at the slumbering child in his arms. The morning sun pried the last strands of sleep from 7-year-old Ryushi Uzumaki Naruto. With an annoyed sigh he left the warm sanctuary of his bed. It seems like just yesterday he woke up for the first time in the Ryushi manor, a day he would remember for the rest of his life. A day when he gained something he had wanted for a long time. Flashback. Day after Akahata's return. Warmth. That was the first sensation that Naruto felt when he awoke. Warmth and a strange sense of belonging. Then again, he didn't really know what belonging felt like, so he wasn't absolutely sure. It was then that the events of when he was last awake flashed through his mind. Okay. Let's not panic. I'm pretty sure someone saved me. Good. I don't know where I am. Bad. Usually when they beat me, the old man is here when I wake up. He's not here. Bad again. Though if the people here, wherever here is, were going to hurt me, they would have just let that shuriken hit me, right? Before his mind could answer him, he felt a slight pressure on his shoulder, over and over again. Leave him alone. A female voice called out. The voice sounded nice. Whoever it was definitely older than Naruto. The voice held a comforting tone to it. I think he's awake. Another voice answered the voice. This voice was defiantly a child. Yep, he has to be awake. This declaration was emphasized with more pokes and PRSO. Sure, the female voice asked. Well, Oni-chan, if he wasn't awake he would have woken up with me poking him. The child's voice answered as if it were obvious. Sometimes your logic is completely illogical, Kimi-kun. Taking the answer as a term of surrender, the poking resumed. Naruto was at a crossroads. He could continue to feign sleep or he could get up. It seemed safe. The chances that they would hurt him with another kid in the room seemed low. So working with that logic, Naruto sat up, shrugging off the fluffy blankets that he had been wrapped in. He took in his fellow occupants of the room. I told you he was awake. A young boy who couldn't be more than a year or two older than Naruto called out. He was dressed in a long-sleeved dark blue shirt with baggy black pants. He had a smooth straight silver hair hanging down to his shoulders. He had pale skin, with dark green eyes with 2 red dots just above them. How do you know you didn't wake him up when you were poking him? The voice replied, as a woman with long reddish-brown hair walked up on the other side of Naruto's bed. She wore black sleeveless shirt with dark green cargo pants. She had brown eyes, and her cheeks had red rectangle markings on them. She smiled at Naruto. Hey, how are you, cutie? You feeling better? Not to be rude, miss, but I don't even know who you are or where I am. Naruto answered hesitantly. Oh, I'm sorry. You can call me Rin, and the punk on your right over there is Kimimaro. She laughed as the boy, now identified as Kimimaro, scowled and did his best to intimidate her with a glare. As for where you are, you're in the guest room of the Ryushi manor. So how are you feeling? Naruto looked into the women's eyes, and for the first time in a long time he could find no malicious intent in them. I'm feeling okay. But what am I doing here? Last thing I remember, some wall appeared between me and some moron with a huge ninja star. He found it somewhat easy to talk to the woman. For what reason he didn't really know. Well, from what Akahata-san told me, he chased away the idiot villagers and brought you here. Don't worry though, you're completely safe here. Okay? She asked, smiling at the 5-year-old savior. Oh, okay. Rin-chan, but who is Amatata? It's Akahata. Don't worry, when I first met him I had a hard time too. Although now I just call him To-san. Kimimaro chirped as he walked out the room. So Rin-chan, what happens now? Naruto queried, a bit scared that he would be separated from some seemingly nice people too soon. Before Rin could answer, a different voice cut her off. Now you and Sarutobi-sama decide how things are going to work. In the doorway stood a masked figure staring at Naruto. Naruto stared back. This was by far the most intimidating man he had ever laid eyes upon. His figure was imposing enough. Upwards of 6.5 feet and a muscular build that made most shinobi he had seen before look scrawny by comparison. He radiated an aura of barely restrained ferocity, yet the mask, that simple piece of modified porcelain, cold, uncaring, not revealing whether the man was smiling warmly or sneering cruelly, was by far the most unnerving aspect of him. "Hello, Naruto. I trust you slept well?" The boy only nodded dumbly. "I can see you are still a bit on the nervous side. Don't worry about it. Get up and get ready for the day. There's some cloths for you in that chest. When you're done, come downstairs and then we'll go see Hokage-sama." "Naruto, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. And things are going to be different from now on, I promise." With that, the figure was gone. "Don't worry about him. I know he seems a little off, but he genuinely cares for you, and as long as I've known him, that has never been a bad thing," Rin said before casting another warm smile. "Well, like he said, you should get ready. The bathroom's just down the hall, and like he said, come down when you're ready." Rin began walking towards the door and stopped just as she stepped into the hall. Without turning to look at the boy, she spoke. "Naruto, I don't know what will happen from here, but me, Kimi-kun, and Akahata-san will always be on your side. Just think of us as family, okay?" Without waiting for an answer, she left. "Family," was all the blonde boy said as a small smile graced his lips. With warm thoughts and high hopes, he rolled out of bed and started to get ready. End flashback. Then again, that wasn't the only thing he got. He was also able to obtain something he had wanted since the first day. He was able to recognize the glares the villagers sent his way. Answers. Flashback. Later that day, Naruto sat quietly in the office of the Hokage, currently watching as Akahata discussed the adoption of not only him, but Kimimaro and Rin into the Ryushi clan. So far, the events of the morning, especially this particular meeting, had been a blur. From eating one of the best meals of his life for breakfast to dressing in cloths that actually fit, he was broken out of his musing by the Hokage. "So Naruto-kun, do you really understand what is going on here?" "Not really, Ji-san. Well, Akahata-san here wants to adopt you. You'd live with him and he'd help take care of you. Would you like that?" "Anyo, Ji-san, I really don't know the guy. I mean, he seems nice, but people have tricked us before, remember?" "Naruto, I really don't think you have to worry about that this time, but I'll let Akahata-san explain that." All the attention in the room shifted to the masked man who walked over and kneeled in front of Naruto's seat. "Naruto, I'm going to go ahead and come out with it. Naruto, I'm your mother's brother and your uncle. Before you ask, I haven't been around because I was on a long mission, and that's why I apologized this morning. Now if you can, calmly ask your questions, I'll do my best to answer them." Akahata looked up to see Naruto staring at him wide-eyed. He was suddenly knocked to the ground in a flying hug from the now crying blonde boy. "You're telling the truth, right? This is no joke or trick," the little child sobbed. "No, Naruto, no joke. You're my nephew, and if you want, I'd like for you to be my son." "Wait a second, you're my uncle, so that means you know who my parents were, right? Can you tell me about them, please?" the young blonde pleaded. "Naruto, I can't tell you just yet, okay? Before you get upset, let me explain why. Your parents were both wonderful people, heroes even. Their names were known throughout the shinobi nations as legends of their time. Unfortunately, where there are heroes, there are villains, and your parents had many enemies that would like nothing more than to take out their revenge upon their only child. So how about we make a deal?" "What kind of deal?" Although a little disappointed even at his young age, Naruto could understand the reasoning. "On your 12th birthday, I'll tell you the names of your parents, okay? By then most of kids your age will become genin, and you will most definitely be strong enough to protect not only yourself but your friends also." "You really think so?" Naruto's eyes brightened significantly, not only at the thought of being strong but also having friends. "Naruto, if by the time your friends have become genin, you and Kimimaro aren't able to beat most of the people in this village, then I will have broken the promise I made to your parents, and that is something I refuse to do. So how do you feel? Would you like a Tusan?" "And Oni-chan," added Rin, walking up to Naruto's right. "Don't forget an Aniki," chirped Kimimaro as he bounded to take a spot on the boy's left. "Oh, okay. But only if you do one thing for me," the blonde boy answered, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Everyone leaned in to listen to his demand. "Let me see your face. I need to see if you're being sincere." He hated to make it seem like he was paranoid, but he really had been burned many times. He watched slowly as the man known as Akahata, his soon-to-be Tusan, slowly slid his mask off his face. The thing that stood out the most were the 4 scars that adorned his otherwise unblemished visagrilel diagonally down his right cheek and 1 scar dragged over his left eye. Observations done. Naruto, his dark brown eyes, and once again as with Rin this morning, saw no hint of ill intent. In fact, there was care and adoration in his eyes. After a couple of more seconds of searching his uncle's chocolate orbs, Naruto once again enveloped his uncle in a flying hug. Tusan. I have a Tusan now. He looked back to the smiling visages of Rin and Kimimaro. An Oni-chan and an Aniki too. Ji-san, I have a family now. The blonde cried out, with the last half being directed at the Sandame, who for the first time in 5 years didn't feel so old. It's official then, Naruto-kun, from here on in, you will be known as Ryushi Uzumaki Naruto, declared a smiling Hokage. Now that the adoption is taken care of, there's a very important story I need to tell you, son. It takes place 5 years ago, and like most stories there is a hero and a villain, but what makes this story different is, the hero of the story, well, he never had a choice. End flashback. That was the day that he was told of the Kyuubi and the fact that he was the container. To say that he was shocked would be an understatement. He still cringes when he remembers how his Tusan answered his inquiry into whether he was a demon or not. A swift backhand and being encased in a Suiru no Jutsu water prison, while being given the same lecture Akahata had given the night before. Needless to say, there were some tears shed. However, after falling to pieces and putting himself back together again, with the help of his newfound family, Naruto was fine. The rest of that week Naruto spent getting to know his family as well as getting used to having a welcoming home to return to. During this week he noticed a marked decline in physical assaults on him and even had a few villagers apologize to him. Still, Naruto spent the majority of his time with his new siblings. Kimimaro, he discovered to have a rather unique personality, being very open and friendly with those he was close to and quiet and stoic at any other time. Naruto found out that Kimimaro had a hard childhood as well, being kept in a cage by his own family, used as nothing more than a weapon. He was only spared further hardship when one of his clan had tried to sell him to a missing nin, only to have Akahata stumble upon the deal and kill both men. Since then he had pledged his loyalty to the man who had given him freedom. Naruto still remembers almost jumping out of his skin when Kimimaro first gave him a glimpse of his bloodline, the Shikatsumiyaku corpsebone pulse. When Kimimaro asked Naruto if he thought he was a monster, the blonde replied simply no, he thought he was awesome. From that day forward the two were inseparable. Rin had been a ninja of the leaf before, and left when her teammate died. She had just wandered around smaller villages using her knowledge of medical techniques to earn enough money to continue traveling and drinking herself numb. She had met Akahata when he found her being drugged half passed out into an ally by some other drunks, and simply joined as a traveling companion. After a couple of years of traveling together with Akahata and Kimimaro, as well as some sagely advice from Akahata, she opted to return home to Konoha. Naruto had also met another group of siblings when he was introduced to Hayate Gecko and Azuki Yugao, or as he knew her, Neko-chan. The real highlight of that week was making a new friend. Flashback. 3 days after Naruto's adoption, Naruto had just bought a tray of dango from a vendor in the park and was making his way to sit on the bench. As he sat there nibbling on his treat, he saw a girl with dark purple hair and a trench coat walking up to the cart mumbling something about visiting Akahata-kun. For a second he wondered how she knew his Tusan, until he heard the vendor charge her well over twice as much as he had him for the dango. Something she did not take lightly. What are you trying to pull? That's too much for some dango. Well, any associate of the snake pays that price, wench. A flash of pain and sadness crossed her eyes as the vendor mentioned the snake. Look ass, I've had a really bad day, can we not do this? If you're so low on cash, why don't you just ask to be paid by the people you whore yourself out to? After Orochimaru, your standards can't be that high. Judging from her wince, that really seemed to strike a nerve. Why do you even bother being in this village? No one cares about you. And no one will ever love you. Who wants the sloppy seconds of a SNA? He was cut off by a right hook from said the girl, who just stormed off. Naruto, for one, was intrigued and decided to follow the girl. As he did, he noticed the looks sent her way, as the same that were sent his. Finally, the girl ducked behind several large trees. He watched as she curled up in a ball on the ground and silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Walking up to the girl, he could hear her mumble quiet curses at the village. She stopped when she noticed his approach. "Can I help you, Whisker Boy?" she mumbled. Naruto said nothing. He just sat next to her and offered her one of his sticks of dango. "Ah, that's pretty chivalrous of you, brat. But don't you know you're not supposed to be around me? I'm bad news," she said as she accepted a skewer of dango and began nibbling. "So am I, judging by the glares, so no worries, Anyo, I never got your name." "That's because I never gave it. The name's Anko, kiddo," she said as she swiped another skewer. She was surprised when he didn't protest. "It's hard, isn't it, Anko-chan? Being hated, I mean," proclaimed the blonde. Yeah, it is, kid. The loneliness makes it worse though," she said, a small tremor in her voice. "I know what you mean, not anymore though, my new two-san saved me from that." "Well, count your blessings, kid." With that, the two sat there enjoying some dango and the breeze, until Naruto got an idea. "You wanna meet him? My two-san, I mean. He helped me, maybe he can help you." "Sorry kiddo, I don't think that is such a good idea. I'm really in no mood to be condemned by any more idiotic villagers." "Anko-chan, do you really think that an idiotic villager would be the one to save me?" Naruto questioned, pointing a finger at his whisker marks. "Oh yeah, you got a point there. So who is this mysterious savior, Gaki-kun?" "Gaki-kun? Whatever, my two-san names is Akahata Ryushi. Why don't you come to dinner? I'm sure Rin-ne-chan won't mind. What do you say? Invitation to dinner, one piece of bad news to another. If nothing else, it's one night you don't have to be alone. Besides, I heard you talking about visiting two-san anyways, so I assume you're friends and that he won't mind." Her eyes widened and brightened a bit at the sound of his two-san's name, so he could only assume they were indeed friends. "You know what? You got yourself a date, Gaki-kun. The name's Naruto, Anko-chan. Naruto Uzumaki Ryushi." Naruto chimed as he stood up and offered a hand to his new friend. Anko simply smirked and accepted it. End flashback. That night, the moment his new friend saw his two-san, she tackled him in a flying hug, and refused to let go for roughly half an hour. Even then, latching herself onto his right arm throughout most of the night. Later, when she left, Naruto received a lecture about the nuances of fangirls and the dangers of bringing them into one's home. When Naruto tried to justify his actions by stating that he thought they were friends, he was relieved to find that indeed Anko was some sort of friend-fangirl hybrid to his two-san. From that point on, Anko's presence around the Ryushi manor was a given, and she soon became another surrogate sister to both Kimimaro and Naruto. From that point on, Naruto's memories begin to blur, leaving an image of only one thing: training. Training, and more training. For 2 years, Naruto followed an extensive training regimen. Waking up at 5 a.m. to train until 11 a.m., then a lunch and leisure break until 1 p.m., more training from 1 to 7. Din break until lights out at 10 p.m. This gave them 7 hours of sleep, 12 hours of training, and approximately 5 hours for leisure and meals. For the first year, Akahata trained them personally in nothing but the basics of the basics: speed, strength, stealth, strategy, marksmanship, and chakra control. It was during this year that Naruto discovered just how big the sadistic streak that his father had really was. Marksmanship training that consisted of Akahata throwing senbon needles at the two boys who used their own needles to deflect his. The motivation was simple: you were either accurate in your throws or you were skewered. Akahata also worked the boys to the bone on increasing power in which they threw their weapons. His reasoning being that accuracy doesn't matter if an enemy sees it coming the whole way. Stealth training consisted of being hunted by Akahata and at sometimes Anko as well. Punishment for being caught was an hour of marksmanship training. Speed and strength were built through both physical weights and chakra restriction seals, while running laps around the village, and strategy sessions consisted of Akahata hiring genin. teams to use as enemy nin in combat scenarios. Chakra control was by far the thing that the boys trained in the most. From Akahata's own twist on the tree climbing and water walking exercises, such as dodging dive-bombing hawks while doing laps up and down a tree, or having Anko fill whatever pond used for water walking with venomous snakes, to scaling both the Hokage Tower and monument repeatedly, and using chakra to keep themselves from skewering their feet as they walked on a bed of senbon needles and other bladed and heated surfaces. At the end of the first year after, they were able to prove that they could hit 9 out of 10 targets at a throwing speed that surpassed the reflexes of your average mid to high chunin. Sneak past at the very least low chunin, outrun any chunin with their weights on, display at least chunin level decision-making and problem-solving and chunin level chakra control. Akahata decided that the boys were ready to learn something more substantial. Flashback. Naruto age 6 and Kimimaro age 7. Naruto and Kimimaro were up at 5 a.m. and after some breakfast and the daily warm-up they met Akahata at the training grounds behind the Ryushi Manor. Okay. Guys, just want to say that you're both doing great so far, but to tell you the truth, you both would still not even be considered genin. The eyes of both boys widened substantially and of course they wanted answers. What do you mean to-san? What was the point of all that training then? Naruto demanded. Don't get me wrong, you could both pose a substantial threat to most genin and chunin, but you are both not ninja. If I had to label you anything, you'd be some common warrior or sniper. Would you please explain to-san? What is it that we are doing wrong? Questioned Kimimaro a good deal quieter than Naruto. Simply put, you guys are both great but only know half of what it takes to be a ninja. You know no jutsu, have no real fighting style, and no experience. Naruto, I haven't even told you of your bloodline limits in. Bloodline limits? As in more than one? Naruto questioned. Yes, more than one. Me and your mother were the children of in dual clan marriage, so we both have 2 bloodline limits. So in turn, you do too. As do you, Kimimaro. When the silver-haired boy only raised an eyebrow, Akahata explained. When you first joined me, I decided even then that I was going to raise you on my own, so I was able to use a clan adoption technique that was common in Naruto's maternal grandmother's clan. So in short, the 3 of us here are the last carriers of the Uzumaki clan dojutsu, but we don't have to worry about that now. That bloodline limit won't activate until you've achieved your rights, and seeing as I'm the only one here qualified enough to determine rights, you'll activate it basically when I want you to. I would have given it to Rin-chan, but after a set age the eyes are no longer capable of withstanding the process. Anyway, back on topic. Naruto knows next to nothing about his bloodlines, and from what you told me, Kimimaro, you only know the most basic of the Kagaya dances, correct? Yes, to-san, I only know the Tenshi Senden, finger bullet drill, and Tsubaki no Mai, dance of the camellia. The boy demonstrated by pulling a sword of bone from his right arm. Those were the only things they taught me, just enough to go hack away at an enemy. Okay. Then, until we find some more information on your techniques, we'll just have to find a way to help you be creative. Now here's what is going to happen. First things first, you two are going to learn Ryushi clan taijutsu style, as well as another one of our clan specialties, using one-handed signs to focus your chakra for jutsu. After that, Naruto, you'll work with me on your other bloodline limit, and Kimimaro, we'll find a way to maximize the limited knowledge we do have. Okay. Hi. The boys chorused out. End flashback. With that, the second year of training began. Naruto and Kimimaro spent the whole of the first month doing nothing but learning the family taijutsu style, learning how to use one-handed hand signs, and the 3 basic academy jutsu minus the Bushin, which was replaced with Kage Bushin. After that, the boys jumped into an intensive training regimen. The first thing Naruto learned about was his other bloodline limit, the Hyeten affinity. It allowed him, with practice, complete mastery over water and ice. He was taken aback a bit when Akahata told him that there were really only 2 traditional clan techniques, those being the Sensatsu Suisho, flying water needles, and the clan's signature technique, the Makyu Hyu Sho, demonic ice mirrors. Akahata told him that the clan really stressed a creative approach to using the bloodline, preferring to allow members to find their own way to apply it. He also offered to teach Naruto some of his own techniques, though most of them would require a good level of proficiency in Hyeten, some more so than even the demonic ice mirrors. This is what Naruto spent the rest of the year practicing, along with his routine of the basics as to not let his skills dull. By the end of the year, his proficiency with Hyoten was enough to allow him to perform both the Sensatsu Suisho as well as the Makyu Hyu Sho, although he had a decent amount of trouble learning to transport between the mirrors. He had also gained enough proficiency for Akahata to teach him some of his easier Hyoten techniques, such as making Hyo Bushins, ice clones. He discovered that using Hyo Bushins in tandem with Kage Bushins created a devastatingly effective confusion tactic against most ninja. He also learned the hand signs to using one of Akahata's signature Hyoten jutsu, the Hyoten Hyoryuden, Ice Release, Ice Dragon Blast. He was, however, warned that he could not use the technique unless it was a life or death situation, as he would have to release all of his chakra. Inhibitor seals to have enough chakra, and even then he could only perform it once safely. Naruto also created a new Hyoten technique on his own called the Hyokoken, Ice Guardian, in which a field of razor-sharp icicles burst outward from the ground, surrounding Naruto. Kimimaro spent most of his time trying to figure out the inner workings of his Shikatsumiku. After the year, all he could really do in respect to his bloodline was to find a way to bring plates of his bone to act as armor against taijutsu and weapon strikes. When he first heard that Akahata was going to be helping Naruto with his bloodline, he couldn't help feel a slight bit of fear that Akahata was going to favor Naruto. As much as he loved his new Odato, he didn't want to have his growth ignored because of him. His fears were alleviated when Akahata tested him for his chakra to find that he had 3, water and earth due to his bloodline's influence, but lightning as well. So in the end he was trained in a few minor jutsu of each by Akahata, Enko, and Kakashi. The biggest improvement deadliness, however, was when he was given swordsmanship training under Hayate at the request of Akahata. This effectively turned Kimimaro's limited knowledge in the workings of the Shikatsumiku into a strength. Since the creation of his bone swords was pretty much his extent of the Kagaya dances, he trained like a madman in Kenjutsu. Soon he made a name as a prodigy in the field, and was one of the top 10 swordsmen in Konoha despite his age. Naruto finished reminiscing as he walked downstairs to the kitchen for a quick breakfast. It was there he spotted Kimimaro already eating, with Rin getting ready to head to the hospital. She paused before heading out the door and grinned at the two. "See ya later, Naru-kun, Kimi-kun. Akahata is out finalizing things. You guys meet him at training ground 9. Oh. 'Kay. Good luck guys, don't break them too bad." With that she was out the door. Naruto snatched an apple off the table and simply began to nibble on it as he and his Aniki sat in contemplative silence. Today they would take a special test to see if they are competent enough to become ninja of Konoha. They were both sure they could handle whatever was thrown at them but still couldn't fight down some butterflies. Their two-san went out on a limb to request this of the Sandame. Usually no matter what training a child receives at home, they still had to attend the academy. Even the prodigious Uchiha Itachi, who he had met a few times, had to go through the academy. They simply just sent him earlier. To be able to become a ninja without setting foot in the academy hadn't been done before to his knowledge. With this thought in mind, Naruto and Kimimaro got ready to head out to training ground 9. Akahata Ryushi had never been a boastful man, but he had the utmost confidence that his two boys would be joining the ranks of Konoha today. It had taken a lot to convince the Sandame to even give the two a chance, including guilt-tripping and blackmailing him about how the Kunoichi would react to his choice of reading materials. In the end, it was the swearing of Akahata to rejoin the ranks of Konoha as the general of the Hunter Nin Corps to make it happen. He was a little surprised at the test the Sandame chose but was still completely confident. Those two boys were prodigies of the highest order. In the village of Konoha, where every carrier of a bloodline with decent skills is labeled a genius, Naruto and Kimimaro would soon become the gold standard. Kimimaro had quickly become a force to be reckoned with in terms of Kenjutsu and was Hayate's heir apparent to the title of best swordsman in the village. Naruto had become one of the better Hyoten practitioners he had ever seen, even before the mist cleansing. What made him so scary as far as Hyoten went is that he didn't know or use many techniques, but the way he combined and used them was terrifyingly efficient. Both had adapted to the Ryushi family taijutsu style with ease and were excellent in its use. They were both as strong as any boys twice their age, and even Akahata didn't know how fast they were with their weights off. With their weights on though they could match any Junin in raw speed, the exception of course being Maeda Guy. Their marksmanship was as close to perfect as one could get, and on the rare occasion they didn't miss by much. Their stamina and durability were equal that of even the most veteran ninja. Despite the chakra restrictors placed on them that only allows a quarter of their chakra capacity for use, they both still have Chunin level chakra capacity, high Chunin in Naruto's case. Their stealth, however, was absolutely terrifying. It was equal to Akahata's, and that frightened the legendary, quiet conqueror, to no end. Simply put, if Naruto or Kimimaro decided that they didn't want you to find them, well, you wouldn't. In overall strength individually, both boys could beat up to a medium Junin level opponent on their own, and working together, dropping all chakra restrictions and weights, they could defeat any elite Junin and probably hold their own, if not win against a four-man squad of veteran Anbu. Akahata's thoughts were broken when he was ensnared and drugged to the ground in a dual flying hug by both Anko and Yugao. Simultaneous cries of "Senpai" and "Aka-kun" were the only indication of the assailants' identities. "Can I help you too?" His voice laced with humor despite his annoyed aura. "Helping her?" Senpai up Yugao spoke first. "We're here to see how our two favorite ninja in training do." "Yeah, can't wait to have the brats join the ranks. Get to boss them around and everything," shouted Anko, fist pumping madly in the air. "Anyway, how do you think they'll do, Senpai? Yeah, aka Kun. Think they got what it takes?" "I am confident that by the end of the day Konoha will have two talented ninja in its ranks." "Is that so?" came a voice from behind the group. They turned to see the well-known Junin Asuma Sarutobi being followed by what they could only assume was his genin team. "'Cause I'm confident that my team here is gonna send them to the academy where they belong," he mocked. "What's with you, Sarutobi? Never figured you for the mocking type." Anko questioned. "Nothing that concerns you, snake whore. Asuma-san, I suggest you address the young lady with more respect than that," came the frigid tone of Akahata. "Yeah, bearded bastard," cried Anko. "What did you say, yo?" His rant was cut off when a senbon needles peppered the ground in front of him. The group turned to see Naruto and Kimimaro with their hands extended in a throwing position. "Leave Anko Ne-chan alone, Teme," shouted Naruto. "Good to see ya, Gaki-kun," called Anko as she walked over to greet the two boys, all hostilities with Asuma forgotten. "So ya ready to show these punks how it's done, brats?" "Hi, Anko-chan." The two boys droned in unison. All talk was halted with the arrival of the Sandame, along with another group of genin, this time being led by none other than Hayate Gecko. "Okay people, let's get this started quickly, I have a lot to do. Naruto and Kimimaro, please step forward." The two boys were dressed almost identically except for the fact that Kimimaro had a sleeveless dark red shirt to go with his baggy black pants and black boots. Naruto wore the same except his had long baggy sleeves and he had 2 bottles of water strapped to each side of his hip. "You are here to be examined by means of my choice, to become Konoha Shinobi, correct?" "Hi, Hokage-sama," the boys chorused out. "Okay then, seeing as you wish to become shinobi without attending the academy, you will have to take the same type of skills evaluation that we give pre-existing nin who wish to join ranks. You will be tested in combat by an opponent or opponents of my choosing. That being said, Naruto and Kimimaro, you two will be participating in a battle against a team of both Team 1 and 3. "Hokage-sama, isn't that a bit much?" asked Yugao from the sidelines. "It may be, but these two are looking to gain access to a very dangerous world for children their age, and I'd rather them be overwhelmed here than unprepared in the field." "A wise observation, Sarutobi-sama," chimed Akahata. "Boys, if you don't feel up to it, we can always put it off." "No way to, San. Didn't we go through that hell you call training to quit now? Besides," the young blonde glared at Asuma. "I owe the Teme for being rude to Anko Ne-chan," he finished, causing all but one person on the training ground smile. "Okay. Then fighters to your places." The 6 genin and 2 junin jumped into the middle of the clearing. After making sure everyone was ready, the Sandame walked off to the sidelines, and Hajime. Immediately the 6 genin stepped out in front of their senseis. The tallest of the genin simply boasted that they were all that was need to handle the 2 kiddies. Don't underestimate them. Hayate coughed. Before the cocky genin could reply, Naruto whipped out one of his bottles of water and flung its contents at the group. Sensatsu Suisho, flying water needles, cried the blonde as the on turned into a pincushion in the blink of an eye, passing out from the pain. Having their sensei's caution being proven correct, the 5 remaining genin went on the offensive. Naruto was engaged by the 2 teammates of his first victim. He danced around their taijutsu styles, remembering the basics of his flow and dance around strikes like water, and when an opening presents itself, strike swiftly and efficiently. He dodged a thrust kick from the bigger of his 2 assailants and was able to sweep his legs out from under him, before rolling out of the way of an axe kick from the kunoichi of the team. She hesitated for a split second, given Naruto all the time he needed to drive his palm into the girl's gut, sending her down. He turned in time to catch a right hook from the boy in the palm of his hand, pulling him into a right knee to the gut. Naruto simply chopped the hunched-over boy in the back of the neck, taking him out of commission. He turned to find the kunoichi flashing through hand signs. Magen. Narakumi no Jutsu. Demonic illusion. Hell viewing technique. She threw a victorious look over to Asuma-sensei, and he only grinned back. Good job, Taki. Now finish it. She only nodded and turned back to the now quivering blonde. She ran towards him and drove the butt of a kunai into his head. Her eyes widened when he smirked. Take your eyes off the ball and it'll take you out. The blonde grinned before shattering into thousands of shards of ice. Hyo Bushin, ice clone, can be really useful, called out a voice from behind the kunoichi. She turned to find the blonde child. Not only are they durable, but to have all that ice lying there on the ground, it makes it much easier to do this. Sensatsu Suisho, cried Naruto while performing the hand signs behind his back. The kunoichi didn't have time to think before she felt her back explode in pain as she was skewered from behind. While all this was going on, Kimimaro was having fun letting Hayate's genins throw their punches at him only to create a bone plate to absorb the impact. Currently the 2 boys on the team were breathing deeply, while the kunoichi was already exhausted. Deciding to take the offensive, Kimimaro created 6 Tsuchi Bushins surrounding the wide-eyed genins before they could respond. The Bushins along with the original Kimimaro peppered the team with senbon needles. The kunoichi gave in to the pain and blacked out while one of the genin was still standing despite his pincushion state. The other had managed to dive out of the ring of Bushins before the onslaught. Kimimaro was about to address the pincushion when some kunai flew in from behind him only to be knocked out of the air by some senbon from one of his Bushin. He turned to see the same boy that he thought was on the verge of collapse staring at him looking fine. He turned back to see the pincushion crumble to dirt. Ah, I see I'm not the only one who knows Tsuchi Bushin, Earth Clone. Any further discussion was halted when the boy charged, leaving Kimimaro's Bushins to fight his teammate. The 2 engaged each other in a flurry of taijutsu exchanges, until in the middle of an exchange the boy pulled a dagger from his sleeve and jammed it into Kimimaro's shoulder. Or at least that's what he intended to do, had Kimimaro not summoned a plate of bone to stop the dagger just as it pierced his skin, turning the potentially crippling blow into a pin prick. The genin's eyes widened just before Kimimaro pointed 3 fingers at his chest before he whispered, Tenshi Senden, finger bullet drill. The genin was sent to the ground hard as what appeared to be Kimimaro's finger bones embedded themselves in his chest. Kimimaro checked his surroundings to find that his Bushins had apparently overwhelmed the other genin as he was down for the count as well. That being said, he made his way over to Naruto. Clapping echoed throughout the training field as Kimimaro and Naruto looked up to see Hayate and Asuma approaching them. Asuma said nothing as he charged Naruto, separating him from Kimimaro, who without a word created 2 bone swords and took a stance in front of a grinning Hayate. Before Hayate could approach, however, a voice cut through the air. Now Aniki. Without a word, Kimimaro tossed one of his swords towards Naruto, and flashed through a set of hand seals before calling out. Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden mist technique. A thick fog blanketed the area, Obscuring the view of everyone present, the silence that had descended with the mist was broken by the arrogant voice of Asuma. You two brats have a long way to go if you think someone of my caliber can't get rid of this mist. Futon. Daitapa, wind release. Great breakthrough, an enormous blast of wind cleared the field to reveal Naruto standing behind a line of 6 clones, in front of Asuma. Kimimaro was down on the ground. Apparently Asuma's attack had randomly blasted the silver-haired youth. Ha! Look at that. I don't even have to try and it's one down. You're gonna pay for hurting Aniki and being mean to Anko Chan, shouted Naruto as his clones surrounded Asuma, who simply drew his trench knives. Brat, do you really think that clones will be enough to defeat me? I'm not that weak. No, but you are arrogant enough to let them surround you, screamed the blonde as he flashed through some hand seals. Makyu Hyu Sho. Demonic ice mirrors. The clones shattered into ice that quickly formed crystal mirrors that completely surrounded Asuma. Welcome Asuma Teme, announced an army of blondes that appeared in the mirrors. Hayate, upon witnessing his partner's capture, began sprinting towards the ice prison. He was intercepted, however, by Kimimaro, who shot out of the ground underneath Hayate, swinging his bone sword upward. The blow sliced up his left thigh and would have gone higher had he not blocked its advance with a kunai. How? Hanged Hyo Bushin. Impressive. Do you yield? I don't see why I shish. The sentence was cut off when he felt the prick of another bone sword at his throat. Tsuchi Bushin, stated Kimimaro coldly from beside Hayate, as the Kimimaro that had sliced Hayate's thigh crumbled into dust. After a deep sigh and a small cough. I yield. I'm disappointed. Why's that? You held back, how so? For one, since when does a Kenjutsu specialist not draw his sword? Hayate only sputtered and coughed indignantly. It was true and everyone knew it. Hayate simply wasn't going to risk even the slightest injury to his prized pupil. Sensei, next time please do me the honor of fighting me as an equal. Sure thing. Before conversation could continue, however, the dome of ice mirrors fell to reveal a haggard-looking Asuma on his knees with Naruto behind him with Kimimaro's bone sword held to the back of his neck. Feel like apologizing to Anko Chan, Teme? Screw you, you lucky brat. I'll admit I underestimated you. You also overestimated your abilities. Shut up, yelled the now thoroughly enraged Junin as he dove forward, twisting in the air, and hurled a kunai towards the dead center of the 7-year-old's forehead, only for it to be knocked out of the air by senbon needles courtesy of Kimimaro. The Junin bit out a curse and charged wildly at Naruto, taking no notice of the boy's hand signs until a whisper reached his ears. Hyokoken. The ground around Naruto exploded to reveal sinister sharp icicles. Unable to stop the charging Junin was lanced through his thighs, crumbling forward only to receive a chop to the back of the neck. The young blonde only heaved a sigh as he made his way over to his awaiting Aniki and Ni-san. After having some Anbu take the genin and Asuma to the hospital, the Sandame now stood before the awaiting Ryushi brothers. Well, Naruto-kun, Kimimaro-kun, you have both certainly proven yourselves worthy of being a Konoha shinobi. Congratulations. With that he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. It was then that the younger of the newly inducted Konoha ninja realized an important detail. Wait a minute. Ji-san didn't tell us our ranks. His rant was cut off when ND-less were tossed to him, Kimimaro, Anko, Hayate, and Yugao. They turned to the source of the objects in time to see Akahata disappear in a swirl of black mist. The five looked at each other questionably until Anko signaled that they would open the bundles at the same time. Naruto unwrapped the bundle and almost choked. He looked towards the others to find that they all had similar reactions. Wide-eyed and with a flurry of thoughts flooding his mind, Naruto dropped the mess of cloth to reveal the polished porcelain of a Konoha hunter nin mask grasped firmly in his hands. 3 weeks, it had been 3 weeks since Naruto had found out that he, as well as most of the people important to him, had been drafted into the Hunter Nin Corps. Of course he was relieved to find that his two-san would be his boss, as was everyone else. After a week-long break, the group had officially begun missions as of 2 weeks ago. That is, after they were given an explanation of the procedures. As a hunter nin, one was given almost complete freedom. That is to say, one was able to choose who one was going to hunt, when one was going to hunt, and how long one wished to take. So long as one followed a few rules. Every missing nin in the bingo book had a datasheet posted in the main lounge of the hunter nin base. Said datasheet contained pictures, important facts, last known whereabouts, as well as any rumors associated with said missing nin. The most vital piece of information is the rating of said nin, not ranking, which is a rough bracket of a nin's power, but a rating of just how dangerous or difficult to apprehend a target is going to be. For example, a C-ranked Hyuga missing nin by the name of Yutsuko has a rating of 350, while a B-class missing nin by the name of Yayoi Toyo only has a rating of 275. This is the case because although Toyo is generally stronger, he would be easier to apprehend than Yutsuko, if only because through the use of her Byakugan she can evade capture easier. Not to mention that through the use of Jukin, a single mistake by a hunter nin could lead to death with a single strike by Yutsuko. Although rank and rating are different, there is a relative pattern, that being that your average D-rank ninja has a rating of 0 to 100, C rank 100 to 250, B rank 250 to 500, A rank 500 to 750, and S ranks come in at least 1000. A hunter nin is able to remain in the Corps for as long as they meet the monthly quota of at least 250 feet rating points. Any nin who surpass said quota can earn up vacation time. For example, killing a missing nin who had a rating of 750 earned said hunter nin 3 months vacation, not to mention any bounty on the missing nin. Naruto and Kimimaro had formed a team, as even in their official dossiers it was stated that they were very dangerous when working together. Before they went on any real hunts, however, Akahata sent them on a simple yet very important mission. It was AC rank, simply eliminate a group of bandits terrorizing a nearby village. It was important, however, in that it would be the first time Naruto killed. The day of the mission was normal enough. They showed up, beat the stuffing out of the bandits, end of story. Or it was until Naruto stumbled across a tent being used as a prison for the village women and girls. They were being used as nothing more than playthings. Some of them weren't any older than he was, for hell's sake. He snapped, they both did, not a single bandit left alive, not a one who was still in one piece for that matter. After he came down from his rage, and saw the massacre both he and Kimimaro had committed, and he cried. He broke down in the arms of the very women he helped save. Although Kimimaro had experience in killing and knew what the first kill felt like, he really didn't know what to say to his Ototo to console him. Naruto had to wait until talking with Akahata before he started feeling any better. Flashback: Naruto was walking along the halls of the Ryushi Manor, the carnage of the massacre still plaguing his mind. He was about to go to bed when Akahata called from his room. He walked into an unmasked Akahata rummaging through paperwork on his bed. Naruto, I hear you made your first kill. Is there anything you want to talk about? No, To-san, nothing, his answer betrayed by the gathering tears in his eyes. It's okay. Naruto, you can cry. Naruto didn't need to hear anything else. He shot over to his father and began sobbing once he was in Akahata's arms. To-san, I killed them. All of them. I'm a monster. No son, you're not a monster. You're a ninja, a good one at that. Unfortunately, to be a good ninja you will have to kill a lot. Why though? What gives me the right to take a life? No one has the right to take a life. No justification can change the fact that murder is an evil thing. Though it could be called a necessary evil. What? Think about it, Naruto. How many more villagers would have suffered at the hands of those bandits had you not killed them? Remember, they decided that they had the right to make those people suffer. Did they? The boy only answered with a sad shake of the head. See, no one has the right to make someone's life miserable. How many of those women had a little brother your age waiting for them at home, huh? Imagine if something like that happened to Rin-chan, Enko-chan, or Yu-chan, you'd feel horrible. You saved some kid your age from never seeing their loved ones again. Naruto, killing is a big burden to bear, and a lot of the times ninjas quit when it becomes too much, but you need to understand something. That guilt, that burden never goes away. The moment you don't feel guilty is the moment you become less than human. I bear my burden with the simple thought that every person I kill, every sin that I must bear, is one less, that the people I care about have to understand? I think so. Here's what you do. When you must kill, trust your judgment. Trust your judgment, deal your justice, and protect those you love. That is the Ryushi family creed. We only assassinated those we thought deserved to die and only hunted missing nin that deserved to be hunted. Deserved to be hunted? A missing nin is a missing nin, isn't it? Most of the time, yes, but not all the time. Take hidden mist for example. The genin exam used to be having to kill whoever your co-examinee was. A lot of the times students were paired with their friends on purpose, and those that did pass left the village when guilt became too much for them. They weren't hunted by our clan members for the simple fact that it was really perfectly understandable. Why would we hunt a guilt-ridden child, the same way we would hunt a serial killer? Anyways, like I said, trust your judgment and you'll have no regrets. Did this help at all? It actually did too, San. It helped a lot. Trust my judgment, deal my justice, and protect those I love, right? Absolutely. Thanks to San. End flashback. After that, the boys went through a couple of advisory hunts where they did nothing but tail a hunter nin to watch him in action. Currently they were on their first official hunt, their target, Yoshiko Yutaka, B-rank missing nin with a rating of 500. He was last seen along the outskirts of Wind Country, believed to have a small gaggle of bandits. At his command, Naruto looked at the photo on file to see a man in the traditional Chunin uniform. Only thing distinguishing about him was that he kept his entire head wrapped in blue cloth with holes for his eyes and nose. Otato, pay attention, we're nearing the vicinity of his reported base, came the voice of Kimimaro as they leapt through the trees. Kimimaro was dressed in the new outfit that he had gotten as a congratulations from Akahata. He wore a dark blue sleeveless shirt under a dark gray vest, with a sleeveless dark blue trench coat over everything. His black boots and pants contrasted with the 4 white pouches he had strapped to his legs, each containing different versions of kunai, shuriken, and senbon, some whose design is only used by the Ryushi clan. On his head he wore a black knit cap, with a mask. Aniki, how are we gonna do this? Do we just go in and waste everybody, or do we go for the lone assassination? Naruto replied. He wore a dark orange short-sleeve shirt under a dark green vest and a dark green trench coat. Like his Aniki, he had black boots and pants as well as the variety of throwing weapons and other tools. He had his bottles of water strapped to his leg and wore the same type of black knit cap and mask as his brother, his blonde tufts of hair poking out under the cap. We'll try to make it a clean kill and go, but I doubt we'll be able to get to him without being noticed, much less get to him, kill him, cut off his head, and get out. True. Within a few more minutes of traveling, the pair of hunter nin came across a small house, filled with the sounds of raucous laughter and celebration. Upon noticing no guard outside, the 2 boys snuck towards a window. Inside, their target was sitting on a large chair surrounded by his henchmen, all laughing and drinking merrily. On the ground in front of the men was a small blonde girl in a light purple kimono, her hair in ponytails. She was bound and gagged, her eyes laced with fear. Good job, boys. Kazekage-sama should be willing to pay a good amount to see his little girl, eh? Called out the target. A cheer erupted throughout the room. Still, she was a little spitfire, wasn't she, Ryozo? He taunted. Everyone in the room turned to a man in the corner who was holding an ice pack to his head. Laugh it up, boss, she can swing that damn fan pretty hard. The rest of the group got even more chuckles out that. The laughing stopped, however, as one of the larger men had something to ask. Hey boss, you think we could have a little fun with her? Some calls of agreement rang out throughout the group. The question made Naruto's blood run cold. Ever since that bandit camp, rape had jumped to the top of the list of things that deserved death. I don't know, guys, I mean, she's what, 9 years old? That's pretty messed up. I won't call myself a saint, but come on, she's just a kid. Come on, boss, you have any idea how long it's been since I had some fun? Besides, she's younger, more tender, fresh. Naruto decided then and there that this guy was going to die. You all agree with this? Asked the target, Yutaka. After even more cheers of agreement, he sighed, fine, whatever. Just don't mess her up too bad. Family or not, the cage won't give us anything if she's dead. The girl's eyes widened in terror as the group of men chuckled at the decision. Just as the man who asked the question was going to grab her, an explosion went off outside. As men charged out the front door, they were quickly on the ground, picked off by Naruto and his senbon needles. The men, being untrained and unorganized, kept running out the door like lambs to the slaughter, and soon only the target, the man known as Ryozo, and the man who had asked for the fun were left. They took up position behind the girl, the fun seeker right behind her with a knife to her throat, Ryozo beside him, and Yutaka behind them, kunai in both hands. Through the door walked a masked child in a dark green trench coat. "Release the girl," he spoke in a frigid tone. "Who the hell are you? Did Suna send you?" demanded Yutaka. "No, Yutaka-san, I am a hunter and you are my prey." "Damn it. Look, Hunter Nin, this girl is the daughter of the cage. How about a trade? I give you the girl, and you leave me alone." "Deal? Fine, give me the girl." "What, boss, wait a say." "Silence, dog. Humans are talking." Naruto interrupted the fun seeker as he flung senbon into his throat and forehead. As the fun seeker fell to the floor dead, Ryozo made an attempt to charge Naruto only to have his punch dodged and his windpipe crushed by a finger thrust to the throat. Naruto stepped over the now dead Ryozo and approached the girl. Pulling out a kunai, he cut her binds and the girl flung herself at him, nearly toppling him over. As he was consoling the distraught girl, Yutaka called out to him. "I don't know what they teach you in Konoha, but you should never take your eyes off your ine." He was interrupted when a bone sword exploded out of his chest. "Yoshiko Yutaka, you have been sentenced to death by the village of Konoha. May your soul find rest," came the soft voice of Kimimaro. "Take her outside, I'll finish up here." Naruto nodded before walking the girl outside, where she continued to cry. "I know you're extremely scared right now, but can you tell me your name?" "T. Tamari. Sabaku no Tamari." "Okay. Tamari-san, are you okay?" Seeing that she was still slightly frightened around him, Naruto flipped off his mask. Tamari was a little startled at the age of her savior, but zeroed in on the blonde Hunter Nin's deep blue eyes, finding comfort in the general warmth in them. "Why, yeah, I'm okay. Hunter-san. You can call me Naruto. Now just hang on until Aniki is done and then we'll take you back to Suna." "Okay." She shivered as she spoke, to which Naruto handed her his trench coat. Afterwards they simply sat there chatting amiably. Soon Kimimaro joined them and they boys returned Tamari to Suna, who slept on Naruto's back. When they got there, they were on the verge of being attacked as the suspected kidnappers when Tamari woke up and explained the situation. The first one to thank them was a little red-headed boy named Gaara. He seemed like a nice kid to the two Ryushi brothers, who quickly became his first friends. For some reason they didn't know, no one else around Gaara seemed to like him. Nevertheless, it was soon time to return to Konoha, and the two Hunter Nin disappeared into the desert night, declining invitation to stay till morning. Akahata Ryushi sat in the study of the Ryushi manor, his boys out on their first real hunt. Rin was working all night at the hospital. In his hands lay the worn picture of a beautiful ebony-haired, jade-eyed woman in a black kimono. On her right was a younger version of himself holding two Ryushi clan Hunter Nin masks in his hands, one in front of him and one over the head of the smiling women. In front of them a smaller Nozomi Ryushi smiled up at the couple. Unbidden tears gathered in his eyes as he ran a thumb over the picture. "I wonder, where are you? Are you safe? Are you happy? Did I fail you again? Look at me." Avoiding what I want to ask like some shy school child. "You always did have that effect on me. Did you wait for me? That's what I really want to know." "I did for you. Who am I kidding though? The way I just up and left, leaving you with nothing but a letter, saying I'd find you again. I know you understood though, with Dad dead, the clan wasn't gonna let me and my sister live. As far as they were concerned, we were a perversion of their bloodline, arrogant bastards, noble, but arrogant nonetheless. Then when the war ended and Arashi sent me away, I finally have time to look for you, only to find the clan wiped off the face of the earth. You survived, I know you did, you had to. If you did find someone, I hope you're happy, but until I find you, I'll wait, my Midori." Quiet tears fell upon the picture, whose stains revealed this not being the first time. Akahata was no fool. He knew that, not to sound arrogant, many women, especially Kunoichi, viewed him as an object of lust and/or affection. It was one of the reasons he took to wearing his clan mask pretty much everywhere he went. With the few who had seen his face becoming rather interested in a relationship, his ever-faithful friend, fangirl Anko, being a prime example. He also knew that it irked said women that he was indeed still a bachelor. Too bad for them, things weren't looking to change anytime soon. Sure, he had gotten close to a few women. Frankly, he had more female friends than he did male, but even the closest of these women was kept at arm's length. The closest being Tsunade of the Sanin, who left Konoha just before he was exiled. He would wait, he just had to know what had happened to his first love. He knew that it was foolish in the eyes of some, and childish in the eyes of many, himself included. But he'd indeed find happiness with someone else. He would give his blessing and move on. Until then he would wait. Hyuga Hiyashi was not a happy man. Why was he not a happy man? It was a lot of things really. First, he wasn't able to get a good night's sleep. He was up all night worrying over the future of his daughters. It had been roughly a year ago that Akahata had walked into the Hyuga compound with a crying Hinata. The Ryushi clan head then proceeded to very forcefully make it clear to Hiyashi that their views on parenting were, different. To this day Hiyashi doesn't understand how the man can lift people off the ground by their faces so easily. Regardless of that, after their discussion the Hyuga clan head agreed to be a little less harsh on his daughter. That, and with a few confidence-building lessons at the Ryushi manor, which he suspected Mitarashi Anko of being involved with if his eldest daughter's new hairstyle was anything to go by, had led his once disappointing daughter into becoming a girl he could be proud of. She had still managed to keep her gentle spirit, letting her little sister win some of their spars as not to embarrass her, not to mention condemn her to a life in the branch house. This however led to the Hyuga council demanding he chose one to train over the other, something he was fighting desperately. Lack of sleep over family matters was just one of his reasons for being in a less than pleasant mood. Another was the return home from his diplomacy trip to Taki. Why the return trip? Several reasons really, such as only being given 2 bodyguards. The damn council didn't even allow him to take his usual honor guard, only 2 branch house members. Not even the 2 best branch members, 2 newly named Junin. He swore the damn Hyuga council was trying to kill him. However, the real reason that Hyuga Hiyashi is very unhappy at this particular moment would have to be the 10 Kumo nuke nin that were standing in front of him with his 2 supposed bodyguards smirking at him. Betrayed by main house hating branch members, who would have thought? He had been fighting for about 15 minutes, really only delaying the inevitable. He had no illusions of victory. There seemed to be this grandiose illusion that clan heads were insanely strong. This was pure myth. Most clan heads were at Junin to Anbu level max. Hiyashi, being the second strongest clan head, under Akahata, was at the level equivalent to that of an Anbu captain. He was broken out of his thoughts when his eldest daughter walked to his side and addressed their assailants. "Please stop this. Leave my father alone, and I'll go with you quietly. Just me though, my sister stays here with my father, I'm all you need. I'm closer to." She swallowed the lump in her throat. She had no illusions as to what Kumo wanted with her. "I'm closer to childbearing age," she finished, horrified at the thought. "Nei-chan can't leave," cried out little Hanabi in horror. "Hinata," muttered Hiyashi. He swore to the heavens that if he got out of this he was gonna cry out to the world about the courage of his daughter. "She's got a point," stated one of the nuke genin as he leered perversely at the eldest Hyuga heiress. "Fine, grab her," stated one of the nuke nin. Some of the nin made their way over to Hinata, when Hiyashi dropped into a combat stance. "Don't do it, Hyuga. You know for a fact that you can't win. You even try, we'll beat you. Take both of your girls, and have our way with them while you watch." Hiyashi was about to retort when a whimper from Hinata cut him off. He looked beside him to find one of the nuke nin stroking her cheek. "Don't worry, little girl, I'll be your new daddy, and I'm gonna take good care of you." Suddenly 2 pops sounded and Hiyashi found himself and Hinata about 25 feet behind where they were standing next to Hanabi. In their place stood two trench-coat-clad boys. The one in Hinata's place had a kunai in his hand. "I didn't know you cared, Daddy," taunted Naruto as he utilized the nin's surprise to slit his throat with the kunai. Objective done. He and Kimimaro leapt backwards to the now thoroughly confused Hyuga family. "Are you okay, Hyuga-san?" Naruto asked, not taking his eyes off the group of Nuke Nin. "Yes, thank you," replied Hinata quietly, still disturbed by the implications of the now dead man's statement. "Hiyashi-sama, are you able to fight?" came the soft voice of Kimimaro. "Yes. Who are you?" "Never mind, it doesn't matter, you have my thanks." "Otato, these aren't lowly bandits, no holding back, weights and chakra restrictors off." "Hi Aniki. You heard what they planned to these two lovely girls, and you know what I want." "Hi, no survivors." Hiyashi and his two daughters were shocked at the two boys' rather light banter about the lives of the enemy. "Hiyashi-sama, why haven't you killed the branch members?" "You make it sound easy," answered a slightly miffed Hiyashi. "It should be easy for you, as easy as killing a caged bird," replied Naruto. "What?" Then it hit him and he almost cursed himself for being so incredibly stupid. He quickly brought his hands up in the Tori hand sign. The branch members only had time to widen their eyes before pained screams ripped their way from their throats as they fell to the ground clutching their head. They stopped a few seconds later, dead. "What's the read now?" questioned Naruto. Hiyashi, realizing what he meant, scanned the remaining enemies with his Byakugan. 3 Junin, 6 Chunin. I say a Junin and 2 Chunin each," called Naruto as Kimimaro only nodded. Both brothers put their hands in the standard genjutsu release form and muttered a kai. Hiyashi had to look away as both boys' chakra flashed in his Byakugan. Hiyashi looked on confused when both boys took off their trench coats and tossed them to his daughters. "Wrap up ladies, it's gonna get pretty cold." With that he flashed through some hand signs. Makyu Hyu Sho, demonic ice mirrors. Hiyashi looked on as mirrors of ice inkazed his daughters, who had huddled together. "Nothing can get in and you two can't get out. You're safe there." He pulled out the bottles of water attached to his legs and poured out the water only to have it form a ball of water in front of him. Kimimaro took that as his cue and formed 2 bone swords. You two are Akahata's boys." "Hi," both boys chorused. "Then that means you're Naruto." He only received a nod from the now identified Naruto. "Why help me then? I'm sure he's told you by now that I was in the majority of the council that made you suffer," he stated, still quite ashamed of the whole thing. "Hi, but your daughters have never done anything to me. So far be it from me to let them suffer because you and I have issues," stated the blonde. "Thank you. Thank me after they're dead," he replied as the ball of water now formed into hundreds of marble-sized pieces of ice. "You 9 have been judged for attacking members of Konohagakure no Sato, with intent to kidnap and rape one or both of the heiresses of the Hyuga clan. You are no longer worthy of living, now in the name of my justice, die." Naruto sprung forward, into battle, the marbles of ice circling him violently, Kimimaro and Hyuga Hiyashi a step behind. As Naruto charged, 2 Chunin stepped out to meet him. The sight of the whirling ice marbles that encompassed the 3 combatants made them hesitate. This was all Naruto needed. In a poof of smoke he was gone, appearing behind one of the Chunin and kneeing him in the back of the head, sending him to the ground stunned. As his partner snapped a kick at the blonde, he disappeared again to appear beside the attacker, where he delivered a thrust kick to the outside of the mon's knee. His reward was a satisfying snap as a pained yell ripped forth from the mon's throat as he collapsed in a heap. Naruto disappeared once again and appeared standing in between the 2 downed opponents. He flashed through a series of hand signs before declaring, "Hyokoken." The 2 downed Chunin didn't get a chance to scream as icicles burst forth from the ground, both in multiple areas. Naruto stood there and faced his Junin opponent as still hundreds of tiny pellets orbited his body at blinding speed. From the small gaps in the ice mirror cage, Hinata Hyuga watched in awe as she tried to break down how he had won so easily. After going over what she had seen with her Byakugan, she was speechless. This hunter Nin, The one her father called Naruto had turned a basic academy jutsu into a lethal technique. Just last week she had gone through a lecture over the Kawarimi no Jutsu, replacement technique, and here this blonde genius took out 2 Chunin in less than 2 minutes with it. That's all he did. Through what she guessed was his bloodline, he had the ice pellets surround the 2 enemies and simply used Kawarimi to replace himself with said ice pellets zipping in and out of striking range. While all this was going on, Hiyashi had quickly dealt with his 2 Chunin who had tried to beat him in taijutsu. Really stupid when you think about it. Kimimaro had already diced up on Chunin who was caught off guard by his bone plate defense. He was currently dodging kunai that were being thrown with reckless abandon. Naruto on the other hand was having some trouble. It was his own fault really, he hadn't prepared for a Kumo no Genin that knew some Kaden attacks. So when a stream of fire shot out at him, he was lucky to only get away with some singes on his clothing. However, when he looked up to find a dragon of fire leaving the lips of his opponent, he reacted on pure instinct. With a flash of hand signs, Hyoden, Hyoryuden, Ice Release, Ice Dragon Blast. Everyone on the battlefield froze as the temperature absolutely plummeted and a monstrous dragon of ice left the young hunter Nin's lips. The fire dragon stood no chance against the raw power of the ice dragon as it crumbled and the icy blast overtook his opponent, exploding into an avalanche of ice, creating a miniature Arctic tundra in the middle of the once lush forest. Wow. Wow, Otato, what the hell did you do? I think you may have just rearranged the climate patterns here? No wonder Two-san said to only use it when absolutely necessary, stated Naruto as he fell to a knee, already feel the draining of his chakra stores. Two-san? Only the Nodoka Seifukusha knows that Jujutsu, the Chunin that had been fighting Kimamaro's eyes widened in horror. Seeing this, the 2 Ryushi brothers silently cursed. Retreat, we need to report this. That bastard is still alive and apparently has kids. Damn it. Iniki, use them. Both brothers reached into a specific pocket and pulled out red senbon needles that had pointed barbs at one end. They peppered the 2 Junin and Chunin before the 3 Nin ran off into the forest. What'll you do now? Asked Hiyashi. The boys just smirked before simultaneously making a hand seal. Kase. Activate. They cried out together. In the distance some explosions could be heard. Problem solved, stated Naruto before falling backwards in exhaustion. As his world went black, the last thing he saw was the face of the Hyuga heiresses looking down on him in concern. He awoke in a dark room with only a faint red glow lighting up the room. He looked towards what could only be described as a humongous cage, and was surprised when a pair of huge crimson eyes began to stare at him back. "Hello, kid," boomed a dark malicious voice, as the creature that he had known about for 2 years came into his view. The Kyuubi no Kitsune was making his presence known. "You don't look so tough, damn plushie on steroids." The demon lord looked at the young hunter Nin incredulously before. Ahahahahahaha. There you have it, chapter 3. I really had grander visions for this chapter, but I'm starting to get sick and I figured you guys would want a smaller update sooner than have to wait drastic amounts of time. Real quick, let me get the voting out of the way. I'll do the top 5 of each main character's voting. Remember, it will be only 3 girls. Akahata x Tsunade x Anko x Uchiha Makoto 3, Kurenai 3, Tsunami 2, Rin 1, Shizune -1, Naruto x Hinata 11, Femhaku -8, Ino 7. Tie between Tamari and Ten 4, Kin 3. Kimimaro x Ten 10. Sakura 5. Femhaku 4, Tayuya 3. Tie between Ino and Kin 2. If there happens to be a far and away 4th place, she might be added. Obviously there will be some conflict between some of the harems. I'll settle it like this: if for example Haku ends up in both harems, whoever she received the most votes in is the one she'll be in. Don't see your girl up there? Don't worry, you can still vote for any kunoichi in their age groups. Like I said, I'm just showing the top 5. Like I know for a fact that Hana and an OC, Fem Uchiha, have 2 votes, so keep voting, get your favorite in there. Until then, take care. Next time. Meeting Kyuubi. Lacking thumbs. And what the hell is a bound weapon? So to what do I owe the pleasure of having my esteemed container visit? Asked the demon lord in a much more reined-in tone. I kind of passed out, answered Naruto sheepishly. Oh, I should have expected something like that from you. No way someone like you would ever visit me of his own accord. The demonic fox's face twisted into what could only be called a pout. Yeah, hi, you're a freaking demon. Of course I wouldn't stop by to chat. Why the hell are you acting so laid back anyways? Aren't you the terrifying Kyuubi no Kitsune? I figured you'd hate me. No death threats or anything, screamed the blonde hunter nin. Look kid, 2 years ago I would have done everything in my power to terrify you, but let's just say I've resigned myself to the fact that I'm gonna be here for a while. Plus, I guess as far as containers go, the demonic fox trailed off. What? You're not that bad, okay? Blurted out the fox lord, avoiding the gaze of his container. Really? Surprise evident on his face. Yeah, you could be some loudmouth braggart with no skill to back it up. Or you could be some quiet nut job. You managed to become a decent kid and a respectable ninja, so as far as I'm concerned you're alright, admitted the fox lord grudgingly. Okay. Anyways, I'm actually kind of glad you came by. I want to talk to you. Actually, I want to help you. Oh, now why would the almighty Kyuubi want to help me? Asked the blonde eyebrows rising in suspicion. Simple really, if you die I die. As much as I hate to admit it, I'm completely dependent on you in terms of my life and my legacy. If people aren't going to fear and revere me because of me being locked in you, then they damn well better fear you for the same reason. It's about fame and notoriety, kid. If you become one of the greatest ninja of all time, my name will be right beside yours. No matter what, we'll always be connected. So in essence, I want to solidify my legacy through you. That's all? That, and I want some contact with the outside world again? Before you go all nuts, I just want to be able to sense again. I want access to your senses, at the very least sight, sound, and smell. It's one thing to be imprisoned, but to have your senses cut off, to have taken away what essentially makes you alive in the first place, not even death can compare. So here's the deal, I'll give you access to my chakra, and before you bring up the fact that you can just take it, you should know that if you force it out it becomes a double-edged sword. For every ounce of my chakra you steal, you will lose from your own natural chakra reserves forever, essentially stunting your own reserves growth. Second, I'll give you a summoning contract, as a way to further associate you and your kin with me, not to mention be able to gain a small measure of freedom. Even if it is to be at you or your kin's beck and call. So what do you think? I don't know. Do you have anything more concrete to offer? Don't get me wrong, it's a generous offer, but I don't know, can you train me in anything? You got to remember you're asking me to willingly have myself associated with you, something that I've been trying to avoid for as long as I've known a Boo Point, but to be honest, there isn't much I can teach you. For one, I didn't really have a fighting style, as you see. When you're a 50-story tall demon lord, people don't really care about your technique. What about ninjutsu? Kid, most of my attacks boiled down to raw blast of chakra. It's hard to do hand signs when you don't have any thumbs. I got it. I know what I can teach you. What? Illusions, or I think you humans call it genjutsu. That and raw chakra manipulation, where really the only things we greater demons use to defend ourselves. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of us were lucky enough to have elemental affinities, but I wasn't one of them. How can something like genjutsu be of any use to me? Or chakra manipulation, for that matter? Stated the blonde incredulously. Don't even think about putting down illusions, boy. Think about it from an efficiency standpoint. Creating complex illusions doesn't waste half as much chakra as some of the most rudimentary of your ninjutsu. Besides, all you little monkeys are so busy showing off and trying to secure your masculinity with your flashy little light shows that you forget what being a ninja is all about. And what is being a ninja about, oh great Swami of ninja knowledge? Declared the blonde sarcastically. Efficiency. You ninja are supposed to stick to the shadows, get your job done and get out. Why do you think that adoptive father of yours is so well respected and feared? Even as Bijou knew of him and your Yandaime. Both were considered worthy of some respect as particularly strong humans. Personally, we liked the Iceman better, He did his job with efficiency that impressed evenness, which is why Kumo fell quicker than Iwa. While your yellow flash was running around Earth Country causing a ruckus, the Iceman was killing off whole bases of ninja overnight without the enemy being the wiser. Keep in mind one thing, it'll be the only quote from the Iceman that you'll ever find in a history book. The enemy will fear you the most when they are not even sure you exist. But instead of following his example, you idiots toss around moves that announce to the world where you are. Don't get me wrong, ninjutsu has its purposes in open warfare, but strong genjutsu can open up so many more paths to victory. Fine, I'll give it a shot, but what about the chakra manipulation? One of both your yondaime and adoptive father's prized moves are pure chakra manipulation. Think about it, you can create moves that are completely incapable of being copied by people like the Uchiha. Also, if you get good enough at manipulation, I can teach you the only real fighting style that us greater demons used to defend ourselves in our human forms, the Yukai Harigane, Phantom Wire. You can make it a family technique or something. So there, you get to use my chakra on your whim. You get a never-before-seen summoning contract. A technique that no human knows how to use, in genjutsu training from one of the greatest illusionists in both the human and demon realms. So what do you say? The slightest bit of pleading could be found in the demon lord's voice. Deal. But, as a show of good faith, I want to know why you attacked Konoha, declared Naruto, eyes locked with the thoroughly shocked demon lord. Said demon lord only lowered its head. Fine, I'll tell you, but it's kind of hard on me, so bear with me. Look kid, as a demon lord, when I found a mate to love, I was ecstatic, even more so when I was given the kits I always wanted. Nothing could have made me happier than to just stay with them for all eternity. In fact, I was content to do just that. One day some ninja had the gall to try to kidnap one of my beloved kits to use as a weapon. Needless to say, he didn't get very far before I tore him to shreds like the trash he was. I found a leaf headband on his corpse. Needless to say, I was angry. But I decided to leave it alone. My kid was safe, and that was all I cared about. When I got home, however, my own family attacked me, and the kit. As a master of illusions, it didn't take long for me to discover they were under a genjutsu. They used one kid to distract me while they turned the rest of my family against me. After they killed the kid by my side, I had to defend myself. I had to kill my own family. I had to shed the blood of my own offspring. The worst part was the genjutsu was set to wear off as they were dying, so that I could see the look of betrayal in their eyes. They died, thinking I betrayed them, kid. The demon lord lowered his head, his body shaking. Kyuubi, I'm so sorry, replied Naruto, tears streaming down his face. To this day, I still can't believe how gullible you monkeys are. Ahahahahaha, cried the now laughing demon fox. What the hell? Sorry, I couldn't help it. I always wanted to see if you monkeys would ever sympathize with demons. No, the real reason I attacked your village was, in all honesty, because I didn't want it here. What the hell are you talking about? Naruto snarled, angry at being played the fool. Kid, you said it yourself, I'm a freaking demon. The whole of Fire Country is my territory. About 3 centuries ago I took a nap, and when I woke up there was a damn hidden village in my territory. I was irked, to say the least. It's like going to sleep one night and waking up to find someone camping in your living room. It didn't help that people were bragging about the village, having fighters, especially their Hokage, that could challenge the gods. So I decided to pay the village a visit, to let the almighty Yondaime know that I wasn't happy with the village's trespassing, much less its inhabitants' attitude. I honestly only had intentions to verbally beat down the blondie. Besides, it's not like I really minded. Your damn ninja would be an aid in helping me protect my territory. It was more of a matter of principles. However, as irked as I was, I made a mistake. Yes, I, the almighty Kyuubi, made a mistake. I forgot to change into a human form, so when your damn village's ninja saw a 50-story 9-tailed fox, I guess they panicked and attacked me. From their self-preservation instincts kicked in, and well, you know the rest. You got to be kidding me. Nope. True story. By the way, you should have been awake a long time ago. You should probably go. The Kyuubi said nonchalantly as Naruto's vision was enveloped in red light. Mangy, melodramatic, flea-bitten fox. The young hunter Nin cursed as he awoke to the ever-fluorescent comfort of a Konoha hospital room. God, I hate hospitals. He was cut off from any more hospital room loathing as he laid eyes upon the numerous flower vases and get-well cards. Yeesh, I didn't think I was that popular. You'd be surprised, Naruto-kun, came the voice of Rin as she walked through the door. After all, you don't save the daughter of the Kazekage, and both the Hyuga head and heiresses without earning the gratitude of some people. How long have I been out? About 3 days, nothing really serious, just a case of both chakra and physical exhaustion. Really, we were surprised that you didn't wake up sooner. So how is everything? Just fine, Kimimaro-kun, and the Hyugas walked the rest of the way home and brought you here. It was so cute. The 2 little girls were doting on you, and the smallest one would tell anyone who listened about how great you and Kimimaro-kun are. She said with a childish giggle before turning serious again. At first Hokage-sama was a little worried that Kumo would demand retribution, but Akahata pointed out that since the men were masquerading as missing nin, they couldn't do anything. The moment they would say that those were regular nin, it would be considered an act of war. You should also know that you've gotten some letters from Suna, the Kazekage's daughter, and some other child. I believe his name was Gaara. You should rest though, as soon as you're feeling better real life calls. Finished Rin as she walked out of the room. Naruto found no reason to protest, as he closed his eyes and drifted tep. Scene break. It has been 2 years since Naruto's initial contact with the Kyuubi. Since that day he had become a serious student in the art of genjutsu. Despite his initial reluctance over the usefulness of the art, he found that indeed it could be just as effective in combat as any ninjutsu or taijutsu. Subsequently, his entire style of hunting became different. With a mixture of his already high-level stealth and genjutsu, he was able to perfect the art of assassination, killing quietly, and not being noticed until it was too late to do anything about it. This by no means meant that he had neglected his other training. His Hayaten training was coming along very well, and he was now well versed in Futon and Suiten Jutsu as recommended by Akahata. Kimimaro had also been improving rapidly. His swordsmanship had caught the eyes of many, and he was now considered one of, if not the best swordsman in Konoha. His only possible competition for the title being his sensei, Hayate Gecko. His proficiency in Doden, Raiden, and Suiten equaled that of most Junin. Both boys' strategy-making ability had already garnered them offers to join Konoha's intelligence department, an offer only Kimimaro had considered. As a duo, the two had quickly worked their way up the ranks of the Hunter Nin Corps, earning the ranks of captains, and as such only under Akahata in the food chain. What helped the two of them advance was that they were known to do 2 months of prolific hunting, earning enough points to take the rest of the year off to train. The duo had quickly earned a fair amount of notoriety among the missing Nin underground as the dreaded Kage Duhu Shadow Brothers, their name being attributed to their complete and utter stealth when hunting a target. By the time you saw them, you were already dead. Fortunately, they were able to keep their relation to Akahata a secret. In fact, the knowledge that Akahata had even returned never left the village for fear of a war with Kumo. The notoriety of their prodigy status had also led to a makeshift rivalry between the two brothers and Uchiha Itachi, the trio already being mentioned as the next generation of Sannin. Of course, the rivalry was purely speculation, the truth of the matter being that the Uchiha prodigy was closer to the members of the Ryushi family than he was his own. They had met when Akahata had invited Makoto Uchiha, who was apparently Naruto's mother's best friend, and by association Akahata's friend, to a family dinner. The brothers found the Uchiha matriarch to be a sweet and all-around pleasant woman, though she could turn scary serious when she needed to. Itachi and Kimimaro had automatically found a common interest in swordsmanship, while Naruto's Gen and Ninjutsu catalog had given him things to discuss with the stoic Uchiha. The friendship was a strong one, filled with common interest, a little healthy competition, and most of all understanding of the harsh pressures put on young prodigies. Itachi more so than Kimimaro and Naruto, as Akahata had made it perfectly clear that the boys could take a break from ninja life whenever they liked. Itachi had even found that he respected Akahata more as a father figure than his real father. This was something he only mentioned to Kimimaro and Naruto, but was nonetheless rather well known, especially when the young Anbu captain had tried to join the Hunter Nin Corps, causing a rift between him and his father. Naruto and Kimimaro had kept up their friendships with the Hyuga heiresses as well as Temari and Gaara, and made some new friends in the forms of Yuhi Kurenai, and a girl named Ten. Kurenai they had met through Anko. She and Naruto had quickly established a partnership in promoting genjutsu as an effective combat tactic. She was also a fan of the two brothers for their status as two of the most anti-perverted ninja in Konoha, as well as their well-known reputation for killing rapists or anyone truly abusive to women in the most brutal of fashions. This made the two Hunter Nin the shining star of chivalry as far as the kunoichi of Konoha were concerned. Tenten they had met when trying to get some of the Ryushi family weapon designs, her parents being the only weapon makers with the skills required for most of the designs. She had quickly taken an admiration to the boys for their skills in throwing weapons, and was especially fond of challenging Kimimaro to a duel of swordsmanship skills whenever possible. She went as far as to try to sneak attack the bone user whenever he entered her parents' shop. Unfortunately, the 2 years had also seen the arrival of a new menace that made the boys' blood run cold. It was during these 2 years that the boys began their formal education under Uchiha Makoto and Akahata in the fields of politics, etiquette, economics, law, and pretty much everything else there was to know to take their position as clan heads. Though normally they wouldn't be allowed to take their spots on the council until they were either married, Junin, or age 15, the council had agreed that when Naruto claimed his family name, at the age of 12, he and Kimimaro would take their seats on the council. Today, however, was not a day for reminiscing, thought Naruto. Today they were to receive their rights, as Akahata had put it. It had been roughly 3 years since his two-san had told him and Kimimaro of their extra bloodline, and in all honesty the boys had forgotten about it. However, as they were going to sleep yesterday, Akahata had walked into each of their rooms and told them point blank that they would not only be earning their Kekkei Genkei but also their rite of passage into the Ryushi clan. This is why we find our two Hunter Nin in a dimly lit room, with their bodies covered in seals. Before them Akahata stood staring down at the two boys. Okay, you both know why you're here, the activation of the Uzumaki clan dojutsu. Boys, to be quite honest, there are very few people that know that this bloodline exists, especially with all of the original clan believed to have been wiped out. Naruto, you being of actual Uzumaki blood, will have had this happen regardless, but Kimimaro, as I said before, I used an adoption ritual on you. You both must keep the adoption ritual secret from outsiders, only let those you intend to use it on know of it. If word got out that it existed, the pressure from the village to hand out Kekkei Genkei to everyone would be enormous. Understand? Hi. The boys chorused out. Okay. Now on with the good stuff. The name of our dojutsu is the Kunshikigen, Judgment Eye. It's a rather simple dojutsu with 2 stages, yet its abilities are very effective. In its first stage you'll receive 3 abilities. First off, you'll be granted X-ray vision similar to that of the Hyuga, only on a much more detailed level. You'll be able to see not only someone's chakra system but also their muscular, circulatory, skeletal, and nervous system, as well as the major organs. Using this sight one can easily strike critical areas for quick and efficient kills, or if one were to be a medic nin, diagnose ailments and injuries almost instantly. The second ability you'll receive is again like the Byakugan in that you'll receive telescopic vision, being able to see very long distances. However, unlike the Hyuga, you will also be granted microscopic vision, being able to see things at a cellular level. The last ability of the first stage would be an incredible increase in not only perception, but hand-eye coordination as well. This makes your accuracy even better than it already is, and when used by medic nin, surgery is that much easier. When activated to the first stage of the Kunshikigen, your eyes will glow a dark orange with 4 black diamonds forming a cross centered around your pupil. In its second stage, a ring will form around the cross. Akahata removed his mask and showed the boys the appearance of the 2 stages. "Two-san, what about the final stage's abilities?" Naruto inquired. Yes, in the final stage you'll receive 1 new ability and 2 Techniques that can only be done by a wielder of the Kata last ability is psychoanalytic aura viewing. In layman's terms, you'll be able to read a person's emotions and intentions via a halo of color that will appear over their head. You'll be able to tell whether someone is sad or happy, being dishonest, or honest, as well as the relative sanity of a person. As for the whole what colors mean what, you can learn that when you've actually unlocked that stage. Now the two techniques you'll acquire are the Kuki Kanshiki, Final Judgment, and the Kitaku no Tenshi, Blessing of the Angel. The first, the Kuki Kanshiki, is a genjutsu much like the famed Tsukuyomi of the Mangekyo Sharingan. It traps the victim in a dimension in which they will experience every bit of unjustified emotional, mental, and physical pain that they have ever inflicted on someone. Now before you ask, the judging criteria is that person's own conscience. No one is safe from their own conscience, and yes, everyone has a conscience. Those who say they don't are only really good at ignoring it. That being said, this technique was created with an insurance policy against its misuse. If you ever try to use it in malice, instead of using it to protect yourself or someone precious, it will backfire and you will face your own sins. I'm warning you boys right now, this is one of the few genjutsu that can and will cause great physical damage to the point of being lethal. It is only to be used as a last resort. Akahata paused to let the seriousness of his warning sink in. Okay. The second technique, the Kitaku no Tenshi, is a support technique that allows the user to turn as much of their own chakra into pure healing chakra, far more potent than that of regular medic nin. Due to its potency, you'll be able to heal most injuries through simply applying the chakra to the wounds, though for the most dire of injuries you will still need to know the technique behind the process of healing them. Now that I've told you of the Kanshikigan's abilities, I want you to tell me the purpose of the bloodline. If you get it wrong, you won't receive it. Akahata finished in a frigid, no-nonsense tone of voice. The two boys sat there and discussed with each other for about half an hour until Kimimaro cleared his throat to speak. The purpose of the Kanshikigan is to protect those that are precious to us at all cost. Oh, how do you figure? Asked Akahata, though one could tell he was smiling behind his mask. This time, however, Naruto was the one that answered. Every one of the abilities and techniques that are a result of it are meant to have major applications in healing and in battle. But the stipulation of the Kuki Kanshiki states that it can only be used in the defense of others or ourselves. So following those clues, it is meant for us to take care of those precious to us, be it their health attacking them or an enemy, stated the blonde quietly. The whole, at all cost, thing comes from the penalty of the Kuki Kanshiki. If used in malice, we risk destroying our own minds as well as our lives. So protect at all cost, chimed in Kimimaro. Great job, guys, now let's get this over with, stated Akahata as he started a long chain of hand signs while walking towards the boys. When he stopped, his hands were glowing with chakra. "To-san, is this ritual, painful?" asked Naruto hesitantly. Terribly so. The boys only had time to widen their eyes before Akahata slammed his hands against their foreheads. He called out the name of the ritual, though neither boy heard it over the tortured yells tearing their way from their throats. Within 15 seconds both boys were unconscious. Well, they lasted longer than me and Nozomi when we had it done, stated Akahata flatly as he carried the unconscious boys to their room before taking a walk through the village. Scene break. Anko really could never figure out how she got herself into these situations. It had been a relatively good day, well, as good as it gets when you're the ex-apprentice of one of the Leaf's most hated ninja, and 95% of the village populace hates you. She was walking home from a fine night of eating dango and drinking sake when she was accosted by the local drunks. The four had taken the opportunity to berate her for being a snake bitch, before propositioning her due to her status as a snake whore. Then, of course, after she told them to leave, of course with much more colorful language, they tried to get what they want forcefully. And of course, the moment she got ready to protect herself, 4 Anbu and 2 Chunin joined the fray, ready to turn her into the council for attacking civilians, though she had to admit that her status with the council had improved a bit, if only due to her close relationship with the Nodoka Seifukusha and the Cage Duvu, so that is how Anko finds herself where she is. Now, in a dim alley with 2 Anbu holding each arm as the 2 Chunin and 4 drunks take turns beating or groping her. She didn't bother to try to fight back. At full power she could maybe take on the 4 Anbu, but have nothing left to face the 2 Chunin and the 4 drunks. She already had a mission today, so she was at most half empty as far as chakra goes. It wasn't so bad, the physical blows and violations were nothing. As much as it pained her to admit, she was used to it. It was their words, their taunts, those are what slowly chip away at her resolve, their constant claiming of her destiny to be alone. That's what hurt, that and the fact that they were most likely right. Her well-known reputation as a snake whore had always kept most decent people away from her, and if that didn't do the job, the cursed seal did. She would be alone. Forever. It seemed no one to love her. Hell, one of the only guys that treated her decently was in fact Akahata, though despite her outer demeanor she held very little hope for his affections. First off, there was whatever reason he chose to hold off any real relationships with anyone, and even after that it was a widely talked about rumor that Tsunade of the Sanin held a romantic interest in him. Even if the rumors weren't true, the point was the Akahata could choose from a multitude of women, and Anko was sure that he'd never chose someone as tainted as her. She was shaken from her musings by the sound of a zipper being undone. She turned to find one of the drunks undoing his pants. A small whispered, "No," fell from her lips. "Come on boys, let's see if the rumors are true," came his gruff voice. It was at this point that Anko's facade cracked and tears fell from her eyes. The one thing she was proud of herself for was her ability to maintain hold on her innocence, to keep her virginity despite all the attempted rapes and groping. It was really one of the few things she could call her own, something to offer whoever it was that could come to love a tainted woman. As her assailant moved closer, all Anko could do was close her eyes and scream out to whatever god was listening to send her aid. And as if in answer to her prayers, something warm and wet splashed onto her face. She opened her eyes to find a curved blade sticking out of the man's chest. She followed the blade to its handle, recognizing it as the signature weapon that she knew well. Her eyes continued to follow the weapon to its owner, only for her eyes to land on the porcelain visage of Akahata. Everyone involved watched on stunned as the masked nin slid the blade out of the drunkard's chest, the sickening symphony of flesh on steel dominating the night. And as if someone said go in a race, the fight was on. Akahata feigned swings of his scythes at the 4 Anbu holding Anko successfully, with the 4 jumping out of the way, realizing the snake mistress in the process. He then flung both scythes at the fleeing drunkards, with one of them taking the legs off of 2 drunkards, and the other catching the other in the back of the head with the handle, effectively incapacitating him. Anko and Akahata now stood back to back as the 4 Anbu and 2 Chunin circled them. Everything was tense until the temperature plummeted and Akahata finished the last of the hand signs his back. "Makyu. Hugh Show. Demonic ice mirrors," he said calmly, and almost instantly the combatants were encased in the dome of crystal mirrors. Anko was taken by surprise when Akahata wrapped an arm around her waist and dragged her into one of the mirrors. She had to fight not to lose focus as the warmth of Akahata and the chill of being in the dimension of the ice mirror mingled. After that, the fight was academic. It consisted of Akahata zipping between mirrors with Anko in his arms, while she drew kunai after kunai and implanted them into the hearts and heads of her attackers. Mirrors fell, and so did the gravity of the situation for Anko. It was over, she was done. Not even Sarutobi could save her now. 4 Anbu, 2 Chunin, 4 civilians, all either dead, crippled, or unconscious. The people who already wanted her dead were gonna have a field day. Oh God, what was she going to do? And as if the heavens decided to spite her then and there, 2 squads of Anbu arrived on the scene, demanding to know what happened. With a lowered head and tears in her eyes, Anko was about to try to explain when Akahata cut her off. "I killed them. Actually, more like executed them, for the assault and attempted rape of Akona Hakunochi." Anko winced at the thought of what might have happened. Everything seemed like it was going to be okay, until one Anbu member opened his mouth. "Are you sure it was a rape, sir? From what I've heard, he never finished his sentence as he was sent to the ground by a kick to the chest. I should cripple you," stated Akahata in a frigid tone before taking Anko by the hand, retrieving his weapons and walking off. As they walked, Anko desperately fought a losing battle with her raging emotions. Quietly she began to cry, and was about to leave when a warm arm wrapped around her shoulder. "You're staying with us tonight, Anko-chan. In fact, tomorrow grab what you want out of your apartment, cause you're staying with us from now on." She made to protest but was cut off again. "Shut up, I know for a fact you are not happy with just about anything in this village. Not that I blame you. The least you can have is a welcoming home to return to with people that care about you." Akahata smiled as he watched a teary smile make its way onto the kunoichi's face, only to sigh inwardly. Tomorrow was going to be an annoying day. He'd have to be tried by the council for the slaughter, but still he stood a much better chance than Anko did. He'd also have to give his two boys the Ryushi clan trials, and if they thought today was bad, then Kami helped them. Tomorrow. Pain, such horrible and ungodly pain. That was the last thing that Naruto remembered from the night before. He had asked his 2-san if the ritual to activate the Kunshikigen was going to hurt, and his father answered an affirmative, terribly so, and then his world exploded. This morning he had woken up completely fine, save for a little soreness. When he went to talk to his 2-san about trying out his new dojutsu, he was informed of the events of the night prior, and his new housemate Mitarashi Anko. He was also informed that due to Akahata's trial over his murder of the assailants, he would only give the boys a single test to earn their rites of passage into the Ryushi clan. That is where he is now, him and Kimimaro in the middle of a remote training ground, standing before Akahata. "Okay. First of all, congratulations on not dying yesterday. Second, this is your chance to earn your rite of passage into the Ryushi clan. Now I know what you might be thinking. We were already in the clan. While that's true, you aren't considered a true member until you can bear the clan symbol. You can only do this when you have proven you have what it takes to protect yourself from the many enemies of the clan, and in your case, me. Should you earn your rights, you'll receive your clan mask and your bound weapon. I'll explain those should you pass. Your test is going to be simple, seeing as I have other matters to attend to. Simply put, you two will prove yourselves in combat. Your opponents should be arriving soon. I have to go deal with the council. Good luck, boys." With that he was gone in a wisp of black mist, leaving the boys to await their opponents. "So who do you think it will be, Aniki?" asked Naruto in an attempt to break the silence. I'd guess Hayate-sensei and Yugao-ne-chan. No, I think it'll be Anko-ne-chan and Kakashi-ne-san. I don't think so, Ototo. Anko-ne-chan would be with 2-san as a witness. Though Itachi-san is in the village, so it may be Kakashi-ne-san and Itachi-san. Before Naruto could reply, Akahata walked back into the clearing. 2-san, what happened? You really shouldn't keep the council waiting. He was answered when a second Akahata walked into the clearing with one of his trademark scythes in his hand. Before either boy could ask another question, the scythe was slicing through the air towards them. It was then that the two young hunter nins realized that their 2-san would be their opponent. The boys leapt out of the way of the flying weapon and prepared for battle, with one predominant thought running through their minds. Well, damn. Akahata had a headache. A plain as day, someone taking a tack hammer to your skull, headache. Why? Simple, really. He was dealing with the village council. Not the shinobi council, which he could more or less handle, despite a few people on it that he would take pleasure in bludgeoning. No, the village council consisted of the elder, shinobi, and civilian council members. Civilian council members, to this day he doesn't know why there was a need for a civilian council. What? To better understand what the villagers want. Hell, he could tell you that they want to not go hungry, not die of thirst, not be invaded. Basically they want to not die. They're done, see, no need for civilians on the council. He let loose a weary sigh. No matter their uselessness, they were still here and he would still have to answer them. Which he didn't like because, well, they already hated him for taking in Naruto. They also had never forgotten the 2 weeks after he had adopted Naruto, in which a drastic number of civilians that had tormented the young blonde mysteriously disappeared. So all in all, Akahata was in a pretty balanced spot. He had 2 seats on the council. He had the support of the Hokage, his teammates, the Aburame, Nara, Akamichi, and Yamanaka clans, and had reconciled, after they received Naruto's forgiveness, with the Hyuga and Inuzuka clans. Against him were the Harunos, Danzo, the civilian council members, and surprisingly enough Uchiha Fugaku. Most people never understood the animosity between the Uchiha clan head and Akahata. Akahata, however, knew very well why Fugaku disliked him. First off, the Uchiha clan head had disliked Akahata since their first meeting when Fugaku had called Nozomi too common and weak to be the wife of a kage and would be better served as a playmate to the Yondaime. This of course led to a severely one-sided fight between Akahata and Fugaku. Secondly, Makoto and Nozomi's friendship and in turn Akahata and Makoto's friendship had made the clan head paranoid that Akahata and Makoto were either having an affair or plotting his demise. Akahata understood the paranoia as far as the affair went simply because it was common for spouses in an arranged marriage. Fugaku had chosen Makoto as a spouse because she was beautiful, and she was one of the few female Uchihas that had awakened and fully developed their Sharingan. Makoto had no say in the matter, and as a result resented Fugaku. The paranoia that Makoto and Akahata were plotting his demise came about with the widespread rumor that Itachi Uchiha had said that he held more respect for Akahata than he did Fugaku, causing Fugaku to accuse Akahata of turning his child against them. Akahata's thoughts were interrupted when the Hokage called the meeting to order. Okay. For those of you who do not know why we are here. We are here to decide what action should be taken, if any, against Ryushi Akahata for the execution and one civilian, as well as the assault of 3 other civilians. Akahata-san, would you please tell the council your version of last night's events? Sarutobi was acknowledged by a slight nod. Last night, after spending some time with my boys, I decided to take a walk around the village. As I walked, I soon stumbled upon one Mitarashi Anko, being restrained by 4 Anbu while 2 Chunin and 4 civilians were beating and groping her. As one of the civilians let know his intentions to sexually assault Mitarashi-san, I stepped in and executed the assailants. We also received a report that you struck an Anbu that had reported to the scene? Yes, the Anbu member was in the process of making an inappropriate remark to Mitarashi-san. If he didn't have the tact to see that the girl was still in a traumatized state due to the attack, then he didn't deserve to remain conscious. The Hokage only nodded in reply before calmly turning to the rest of the council. Okay. I'll now open it up for discussion. Naruto stood across from his opponent, a Hyo Bushin of his Tusan. The fight up to this point had not been going well for the young blonde, as his cracked mask and bleeding forehead could attest. He waited, ready to react to anything the Bushin did. He was caught off guard when it cupped its hands and water began to collect from the air around it into a ball. Not one to be outdone, Naruto quickly pulled out his water bottles and poured the water into his own sphere. Eyes locked, both Hayaten practitioners froze their respective spheres and watched them break into hundreds of marble-sized pieces of ice that began to swirl around the 2 of them. In an instant they were gone, zipping through the air in a dazzling taijutsu match, after images being the only thing left for the untrained eye to see. Naruto winced as he caught a knee in the ribs, only to push through the pain to throw an uppercut at the Bushin. The Bushin caught his punch and attempted to fling Naruto to the ground, only for Naruto to swing his free hand around to catch the Bushin with a left hook. The Bushin stumbled a little before zipping out of range again, readying itself for another flurry of hand-to-hand combat. Kimimaro had never been so thankful for his bone plate defense. After he and Naruto had split up, he quickly formed his bone swords. He wanted to end it quickly. He was after all one of the top swordsmen in Konoha. Yet after 10 minutes Kimimaro figured out that when people ranked swordsmen in Konoha, they did exactly that, they ranked users of swords. Therefore, if someone used a weapon that wasn't a sword, his ranking meant very little. This was made abundantly clear as the spar had quickly broken down into Akahata putting on a clinic on the side and why he always carried them around. It was brutal. So far Kimimaro had been able to avoid being cut, but he was bashed by the blunter parts of the weapons continuously. Kimimaro ducked a horizontal slash and sliced upward with both of his blade to catch nothing but air. He quickly jumped over a low sweep that had been looking to remove his legs from his body. He looked up in time to catch another blunt side strike to the side of the head, sending him to the ground. Kimimaro bit out a curse as he rolled to a stop. He looked up in time to have a scythe driven into his shoulder, only to disappear into a cloud of smoke, revealing a pierced log. The Bushin yanked the blade out of the log, and looked around only to find a heavy mist rolling in. "Akahata-san, what proof do you have of your story?" asked a lazy Shikaku Nara. "Well, Shikaku-san, I have the report that will be made once Inoichi Yamanaka does his interrogation. But since I'm sure you would want some proof now, there is always the eyewitness testimony of Mitarashi Anko." With a slight nod to the Anbu guarding the door, went outside and came back in with Anko in tow. AKA Kun. The entire village council was treated to the sight of Anko tackling Akahata to the ground. Inwardly, Akahata sighed. Even in situations like this, she can't act serious. Outwardly, he smiled, however, at Anko's exuberance, realizing that she didn't want to let others know just how much the incident had affected her. "Mitarashi, you will act correctly when in the presence of this council," sneered the Haruno clan head. Yeah. So what do you old fogies want? Could you please tell us about what happened last night?" asked Sume Inuzuka. Heavy mist faded to reveal a clearing filled with senbon needles. At first, Kimimaro had believed he had the upper hand in the mist. After all, silent killing had been one of the combat strategies he had employed since childhood. That confidence was shattered when senbon needles embedded themselves in his left shoulder, leaving it numb and immobile. It was only after being victim to such precise attacks did he remember the Kanshikigen, and how with its X-ray vision, it rendered the mist worthless. The fight had proceeded to break down into a shootout of senbon needles. Dozens of the slender barbs flying through the air, most colliding with each other midair, serving as proof of the combatant's accuracy and countering ability. After the hail of needles had finished, Kimimaro's entire left arm was skewered, while he had managed to land a few glancing blow to the Bushin's arms and legs. Kimimaro and the Bushin locked gazes before Kimimaro crumbled into dust, leaving the Bushin to go tense in anticipation of the next attack. The field lay peppered in ice needles. Naruto and his Bushin opponent had just had an all-out Sensatsu Suisho, flying water needles, battle. Both of them had managed to come out unscathed, dancing around the icy needles as they came from everywhere. They both locked gazes as the ice needles that lay on the ground melted and refroze into the familiar small spheres of ice. Both combatants tensed as the spheres began to circle and storm around them again. Then, in the blink of an eye, the two combatants were gone, racing towards each other. Anko had finished telling the council about last night, of course giving them the edited version that she and Akahata had prepared. After volleys of argument from both sides, a voice rang out over the others. "I say they be punished for assault on Konoha shinobi and citizens," cried out the Haruno clan head. "You do realize that I killed them in order to protect the Konoha kunoichi," stated Akahata. "You had no right to kill those men," sneered the Haruno. "They were about to rape me, you bastard," called out Anko. "It would be what you deserved, you traitor's whore. For all we know, she was trying to seduce those men, and when Akahata, someone she's obviously infatuated with, found her, she cried rape, as to not be made out for what she is," cried out a civilian. Anko visibly winced at this, and like blood in the water, the council pounced. Naruto was feeling very proud of himself. In the middle of a flurry of taijutsu, he was able to trap his Hyo Bushin opponent in his Makyu Hyu Sho, demonic ice mirrors. He was now thoroughly skewering the Bushin with senbon needles. He shot towards the Bushin, ready to throw a chop to the back of the neck, when the Bushin simply looked at him and smirked. Bushin Bakuha, clone. Explosion. Naruto was shot through his own mirrors, only to land in a bleeding ball some 20 feet away. He got up and looked around to find another Bushin walking towards him. Naruto sprung up and with a wave of his hand cried out, "Kase no Yaiba, blade of wind." The Bushin dodged in time to avoid the fatal blow Naruto had been looking for, but still got a decent chunk taken out of its left arm. Naruto didn't celebrate the hit though. He was still bleeding profusely, and it was only a matter of time until he would pass out from blood loss. Apparently the Bushin had come to this conclusion as well, as when Naruto looked up, the Bushin had disappeared into the forest. He would have to hunt Tenshi Senden. Finger bullet drill, cried out Kimimaro only for his bullets to be stopped by a wall of water. Sweden. Suijinheki, water barrier wall. The Bushin wasted no veer the barrier and at Kimimaro. Iwe Gosunkugi, rock spike. The spike of earth shot out of the ground in front of him and lanced through the Bushin's right shoulder. The Bushin only bit out a curse before proofing into a cloud of smoke. This caught Kimimaro off guard because he knew for a fact that he had originally been fighting a Hyo Bushin. Then it hit him. Damn it, the Bushin is making Bushins. Yeah, she's a whore, it's her fault, she's working for Orochimaru. She's just acting hurt, I bet she enjoyed it, whore. Snake bitch. Slut. Traitor. Bitter memories swarmed in Anko's head. Hurt, sad, ignored, hated, alone, always alone. Tears pricked at her eyes as every shouted abuse opened aged wounds. Why did they always have to yell at her? She just wanted them to leave her alone. They didn't even have to like her, as long as they just kept the hate to themselves, she'd be fine with that. She wanted them to leave her alone, but she didn't want to be alone. Was pleasant company too much to ask for? Her mask was beginning to crack, and in front of the people who would like to break her the most. She was pulled from her thoughts as a comforting hand fell upon her shoulder. She turned to gaze into the porcelain visage of Akahata. She hastily tried to wipe the tears from her eyes. However, as more and more insults rained down upon her, she couldn't fight them back. They had gotten what they wanted. She was going to break. Suddenly she felt a small tap on her forehead. She looked up to see an unmasked Akahata smiling warmly at her as he offered her his mask. She smiled graciously and took it. Soon, with her face hidden behind the comforting porcelain barrier, she let her silent tears fall, as Akahata wrapped her in a hug and allowed her to muffle her silent sobs in his shoulder. The rest of the council who witnessed this responded with either small smiles or sneers of disgust. We can't just pin this all on Anko, after all Akahata is the one that killed them, smirked Fugaku Uchiha. Yes, shame on me. How dare I kill rapist? Remind me next time that I see any of your wives on the verge of being raped to walk away, replied Akahata lazily. Don't you dare compare my wife to a whore such as Mitarashi, sneered the Haruno clan head. Why yes, I'm sorry, how could I ever compare the two? Anko's heart clenched. Did Akahata just turn on her? No one in their right mind would ever want to touch your wife. Anko released a breath she didn't know she was holding, then began to snicker as the words of Akahata registered, as did many other counselors. All the while the Haruno head was turning purple in rage. Before he could respond, however, Akahata unleashed a killer intent-laced glare at the council. Enough of this nonsense, this is how things are going to go. I killed those men for attacking an innocent woman, who does happen to be someone very dear to me, so I may have gone a bit overboard. Had they not decided to be the scum that they were, they would be alive at this point. I don't think it matters who it was that they committed the crime against, only that they committed the crime. Mitarashi Anko has put her life on the line in the name of Konoha more times than most of you have combined. Especially you, oh great Uchiha Fugaku, great protector of Konoha, who's only been on 2 C-rank missions since becoming a Junin 5 years ago, placing your clan before your village. And Haruno, don't even get me started on you. I do believe that, if memory serves me correctly, no one in your family has ever made it past Chunin. In fact, a member of your family hasn't been a shinobi since your grandmother. Now you can decide whatever it is that you want. I will warn you of this, however, as I did with Naruto, I shall do with Anko. She is as of this moment under the protection of the Ryushi clan. Should anyone try to harm her, they will face our wrath. And I don't think any of you have a clue just how far we are willing to go to protect someone precious to us. That said, Akahata and Anko disappeared into a wisp of black mist. Exhaustion, it was starting to become a factor, no doubt. He was tired, he was bleeding, and damned if he wasn't frustrated. After exchanging rounds of jutsu, Kimimaro and his Bushin opponent went through 3 more rounds of weapon combat. Kimimaro was now being hunted, which was awkward for him because all he was doing was waiting. A rustle behind him set him into action. He formed a bone sword in a flash and blocked the incoming blade of Tenten. The girl didn't stop and kept on the offensive. Tenten, what are you doing here? Don't try to distract me, Kimimaro. Today I take you down, Tenten. Now's not the time, I'm in the middle of something. From the looks of you, you were only training. Now stop backpedaling and face me. Really, Tenten, you need to go, you're gonna get hurt. Kimimaro's eyes widened as the temperature plummeted. He had only felt this once before. He whipped around in time to see a dragon of ice blast through the tree line at him, and consequentially at Tenten. What the hell is that thing? The girl cried out. Kimimaro made to dive out of the way when a glance back showed the budding weapon's mistress to be scared stiff. Without a second thought, Kimimaro returned to his place in front of her and wrapped her up tight. Hold on, Tenten. The last thing Kimimaro heard was her cry out, as the roar of the ice dragon conquered the clearing. His vision was tinted and he could feel his blood pulsing. Naruto had been chasing the Bushin through the forest for a while now. He had been using the Kunshikigen for a while and had kept up with him up until 5 minutes ago when he had gotten out of Naruto's untrained range. To be honest, Naruto wasn't even sure if he was at the same training ground anymore, as it seemed like the Bushin had been running forever. Naruto's thought process ground to a halt when he entered a clearing to see none other than the Hyuga sisters, Hinata and Hanabi, sitting on a blanket having a picnic. He stumbled over to the girls, who gasped in shock at his condition. He was immediately dragged to lay down while the two girls doted over him. After the whirlwind settled down, Naruto fought off the drowsiness to talk to the two. What are you two doing eating in the middle of a training ground? Naruto-kun, there isn't a training ground for 2 miles in any direction of this place, stated Hinata in a calm and gentle tone of voice. Yeah, this is where me and Hinata Ne-chan go to relax, chimed little Hanabi. Sorry to intrude then, Naruto mumbled. Naruto-kun, you need to go to the hospital. You don't look bad enough to panic, but you do know you're gonna pass out any second, right? Yeah, but I got to finish my test, Naruto's voice weakening as he went. No, I'm sorry Naruto-kun, but I can't in good conscience just let you walk away like this, replied Hinata as she stood up and pulled Naruto with her. Hanabi, the picnic is over for right now. Pack up everything and come along. Hi Oni-chan, the little girl chirped. Really, Hinata-chan, it's nothing. Naruto was interrupted before he can finish as the Bushin walked into the clearing. Nice work on the Hengid Bushins, Naruto. You had me going for a second, stated the Bushin as it started doing hand signs. Huh? Naruto was still out of it. What are you talking about? These are Hinata and Hanabi. Yeah, cried out an indignant Hanabi who didn't like being called a Bushin. Her sister simply looked on confused. Wow, your acting is good too. I could almost swear you did stumble upon the girls accidentally. Now enough of this, which one of you would be the real Naruto? Who's acting? Naruto asked confused. No matter, I'll take you out, clone and all. Hyoryuden, Ice Dragon Blast. The dragon erupted from the Bushin's mouth. Hey wait, cried out Naruto, but seeing as his demand was ignored, he sprung into action. He quickly grabbed Hinata's arm off his shoulder and with a muttered apology flung the girl out of harm's way. With black beginning to pulse around his vision, he strengthened to jump and cover up Hanabi the best he could. He passed out before he could even hear the dragon's roar. If either boy had managed to stay conscious for 1 more minute, they would have seen the innocent people they protected crumble into piles of ice. Naruto's eyes slowly cracked open to find him laying in a hospital bed. A quick scan of the room showed Kimimaro in the bed next to him. He groaned as he pulled himself into a sitting position, his body crying out in protest. He briefly wondered how he got there when the memories of the fight came back into his mind. He picked up a pillow and tossed it at his brother, who sat up with a similar groan of protest. Aniki, I lost. Don't worry Ototo, so did I, so how'd you get here? Hit with a Hyoryuden? You? Massive blood loss and a Hyoryuden? Really? Yep. As much as I'd hate to break up such riveting conversation, we need to talk. Both boys turned to the door to find Akahata staring in at them. Hey Two-san. How did everything go with the council? Asked Naruto. Fine, I think I scared them into dropping the matter, replied Akahata nonchalantly. You know Two-san, there is no point to politics if you just scare people into seeing things your way, stated Kimimaro softly. That's why I'm not a politician, I'm a ninja, and as such, using fear to avoid conflict is perfectly acceptable. Akahata then reached into his coat pocket. But enough about that. Before either boy could react, they felt an impact on their chest. They looked down to find the custom hunter nin mask that bore the trademark bird silhouette and talon marks of the Ryushi clan. Congratulations on becoming full-fledged members of the Ryushi clan. The boys looked at him dumbfounded. Huh? Asked Naruto as he stared at his new mask. It was painted the same dark green as his coat with a dark orange spiral encompassing the right side of mask. I think what you mean is how, Kimimaro answered. His mask also matching his usual attire being dark blue with dark gray curved triangles running down its sides. What do you mean how? You passed, answered Akahata like it was the most obvious thing in the world. No we didn't, we lost, and then oh my god, I completely forgot. To-san quick, how are Hinata and Hanabi? Cried out Naruto. And Tenten for that matter, demanded Kimimaro. Calm down boys, those were clones, and they served as a final part of your test. You see, it didn't matter how proficient you were in combat if you weren't willing to protect those dear to you. I'm proud that I can say that my two boys were selfless enough to take a direct hit from a borderline S-rank jutsu for someone they care about. Even if it was powered down. Now like I said, you guys passed your trials, so let me explain what's going to happen. First off, you got your clan mask. The reason you have to prove yourself to earn those masks is quite simple. By wearing it, everyone who's familiar with major shinobi clans will know you are a member of the clan, therefore, you'll be opening yourself up to clan enemies. Second of all, wearing a customized mask defeats the purpose of wearing a mask at all. People will know who you are by your mask, though the fact that they associate you with your mask helps in keeping your shinobi life and personal life separate. If everyone is looking for your mask, simply take it off and wear slightly different cloths and they won't be the wiser. Anyways, once you get out of the hospital, you'll pick out your bound weapon. To-san, what's a bound weapon? Asked Naruto with a curious tilt of the head. A bound weapon is exactly that. A weapon that you will choose that through a ritual we bind it to you, via blood and chakra. You become partners of sorts. Most of the time the weapon will gain an ability in response to your persona. Most of the 7 weapons of the 7 swordsmen of the mist could be considered bound weapons. In fact, save for a slightly different ritual, they are the same thing. I'm sure you've read that the members treat their swords as if they were alive and each sword in turn has a special ability. It's the same thing. The only one who didn't have it done was Momochi Zabuza. He used to say it was because he wanted to get by on his own power. But everyone is pretty sure he just felt apprehensive about the prospect of a sentient weapon. Anyways, you'll see what I mean when we actually do the process. For now, get to sleep and I'll see you tomorrow. It had taken 3 days for the 2 brothers to be cleared to leave the hospital. They now found themselves in the armory, in the basement of the Ryushi Manor. This surprised the boys because they weren't even aware of the fact that the Ryushi Manor had a basement, much less an armory. Along the walls of the rather large room were hundreds of weapons, with hundreds more laying on display tables. Okay. Boys, there are 2 parts to the ritual, the selection, and the binding. The ritual takes the form of a jutsu. All you do is follow these instructions. Akahata handed a scroll to each boy before walking out of the room. After sharing a glance, they began reading through the scrolls. When they were finished, they shared another glance before nodding their heads simultaneously. They boys put the scrolls away and flashed through a chain of hand signs. Buki no Ryushi Gishiki, Duzen Saitaku, weapon of the Ryushi ritual. Natural selection. Both boys cried out in unison. In a small flash of light, the boys felt a piece of their mind wander. Not too long afterwards, that same piece began calling out to them. The boys began to wander around the room searching for whatever it was that was calling out to them. Kimimaro came to a stop in front of a 4-foot-long, black katana. Its hilt and guard were a dull golden color, its pitch-black blade being wickedly serrated. A small 6-inch blade jutted out from the bottom of the sword's grip. Naruto ended up in front of a double-edged kris. The entire weapon was only 2.5 feet long. The handle of the kris was charcoal gray, with its sinuous or wavy blade being light gray in color with the cutting edges being painted black. The blade started wide at the bottom of the blade and narrowed at the point of the blade. As soon as both boys picked up the weapons, they felt the part of their mind that had wandered return, only this time it brought something with it. An in-depth knowledge on how to use the weapon that was in their hands. It was an ingrained and instinctual knowledge, as if they had been studying the weapon since they were born. Tearing himself away from admiring the blade, Naruto turned to Kimimaro. So what do we do next? The scroll says we have to cut ourselves with the blade and sign our name in blood on the blade. Then we do the last half of the jutsu, replied Kimimaro as he sliced his palm with his newly acquired blade. Naruto did the same, following his brother's lead. They both flew through another long chain of hand signs. Buki no Ryushi Gishiki, Shishio Bando, weapon of the Ryushi ritual. Blood bind. The boys cried out simultaneously. Their signatures flashed and disappeared into the blades, leaving different kanji on the blade. The boys once again felt information enter their mind. They found out that the kanji was the name of the weapon, and also found out the ability each weapon gained. So, what's yours? Asked Naruto hesitantly. Serene misconception. I can manipulate the blade however I want, lengthening it, curving it, bending it, even splitting it, replied Kimimaro. That's perfect for you, Mr. Battle Tactics. You're gonna be a monster once you incorporate it into your style. What about yours? Kyusei, sudden death. It lets me merge into and travel through any solid objects to avoid detection or damage. It seems kind of weird to me. Actually no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, think about it, your specialty with your stealth and genjutsu is assassination. Think about how much easier it's going to be when you can now be virtually invisible to everyone. You can approach unnoticed, strike, and then disappear once again. Tassasin's blessing. You're right. I love this thing, replied Naruto as he thrust the kriss into the air. I can't wait to try it out. That's good to hear, came the voice of Akahata as he walked into the room. Because your vacation was over a week ago, get to work. To-san, it had been 2 years since the boys had become full-fledged members of the Ryushi clan, and many things occurred that had shaped the boys' lives. For one, the boys were named Tokubetsu Junen in the field of infiltration and assassination, by the Sandaime. When asked why, the Hokage only stated that he needed their talents in dealing with things other than just hunting down missing nin. The Kage Duhu were no longer a name to be feared by only missing nin. No, now any enemy of Konoha tensed when the title was spoken. Both boys had grown immensely and were now on the verge of being S-class ninja. They were already in the bingo books of 3 of the 5 great shinobi villages, though the bounty on their heads was highest in Kiri. Apparently the fact that they were both rumored to be members of clans that the Mizukage had ordered eliminated made Kiri nervous about possible attempts at revenge from the 2 brothers. Iwa and Kumo simply put any noteworthy ninja of Konoha in their bingo book as a sign of their disdain for the village. Naruto had become quite the accomplished saboteur, to go along with his reputation as the top Rakan nin and one of the top assassins in Konoha. He made himself quite the phenomenon in Iwa, where bases were known to mysteriously burst into flames and burn to the ground at random intervals. Kimimaro, though still a fan of the clean, quiet, and efficient kill, had earned a name for himself as a monster melee fighter. Over the years he finally began progressing in the Shikatsumiku and could now manipulate his bones very well. He still didn't know any of the names of the dances, but decided that announcing what he was gonna do took away the element of surprise of the technique and left his attacks nameless. Together the boys' progress only increased their capabilities as a team, with Naruto becoming the finesse and Kimimaro being the offensive muscle. This notoriety led to interesting situations, such as the 2 boys being used as honor guards for diplomatic missions as a subconscious show of muscle by the village. It was on one of these types of missions that Naruto met up with someone who would go on to be a major link to his heritage. Flashback: Naruto sighed for what seemed like the 100th time that day. He and Kimimaro had just been specifically requested for a C-class mission. Their mission: serve as guards at an exclusive hot springs at which Hyuga Hiyashi and his daughters were going to host a big-time landowner and his family. Needless to say, they were a little bit annoyed, going from doing missions of dire village importance to aiding in stroking the ego of some wealthy snob. Currently he and Kimimaro were standing on the fences of said hot springs looking outwards as not to be accused of anything indecent. Hyuga Hiyashi was quite pleased. He currently had his important guest's full attention. The first thing his guest had noticed was Kimimaro and Naruto, and had asked if they could be trusted. This prompted Hiyashi to enlighten his guest as to just who the two boys were and their status as the nightmare of any pervert. He even went as far as to tell him about the incident those years ago. Needless to say, the sheer appreciation in the man's eyes for Hiyashi hiring such honorable and strong guards to protect his family made the Hyuga head smirk. Those boys were going to have quite the political influence when they grew up. Hinata sighed as she listened to the landlord's eldest daughter rant about her boyfriend. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with it, just that it was an incredibly boring subject to her. Though the girl being 13 and Hinata being 11 might have something to do with it. She really didn't want to be here, but her father had made it clear she and Hanabi were responsible for entertaining the landlord's 13, 10, and 8-year-old daughters. While some of the other female main house members chatted with his wife, what really didn't help was that Naruto and Kimimaro were less than 50 feet away being forced to play lookout because her father wanted to show off. Though she couldn't say she didn't like having Naruto around, they had become friends since the cloud incident. Hinata could honestly say she liked the boy, though it would only be a general liking seeing as she didn't get to see him around a lot, him being such an important ninja. Her interest in him, however, paled in comparison to 6-year-old Hanabi's hero worship of the boy. Naruto and Kimimaro had become little Hanabi's idols, though to her Naruto was slightly cooler because he got rid of the bad man who touched Oni-chan. Hey, those two aren't perverts, are they? Hinata was broken out of her thoughts by the 13-year-old. No, you don't have to worry about them, replied Hinata calmly. Who are they? Asked the confused girl. They're some of the strongest ninja in the village, they're our guards. Strong, huh? They don't look like much, replied the girl, a slightly haughty tone entering her voice. They are rather young, my age even. But make no mistake, they are very strong, ground out Hinata, trying to remain civil towards the girl who was insulting her friends. Hanabi had no such intentions. Yeah, Naruto ni-san and Kimimaro ni-san are real strong, cried out Hanabi. An awkward silence fell upon the group of girls after the tiny girl's outburst. In that silence, tiny giggles were heard. Reacting quickly, Hinata activated her Byakugan and found a strange white-haired man, with red markings on his cheeks and dressed in some rather odd clothing. He was looking at the women through a telescope and was writing in a notebook furiously. Naruto-kun, Kimimaro-kun, pervert, she cried out, getting not only the attention of the guards but also everyone in the hot springs. The lord's family made to get up in panic when they were calmed by the Hyugas, who simply proceeded to get ready to watch the show. The man only had time to bite out a curse as the black, whip-like blade of Kimimaro's Sarame made confetti out of the notebook he had been writing in. He looked up in time to dodge another sweep of the blade. He quickly took to the roof of the bathhouse to try to escape when Naruto shot out of the ground with an upward slash of Kaiusei. The pervert tried to turn to run only to find Kimimaro there. Pervert, how dare you spy on the occupants of these hot springs? Some of them are little girls, for Kami's sake, bit out an enraged Naruto. First of all, I'm not a pervert, I'm a super pervert. Second of all, I wasn't looking at the children, though I probably will when they're older. You ever notice just how gorgeous Hyuga women are? The temperature plummeted and his answer was being encased in ice mirrors. What's going on? Asked the landlord's wife as slabs of ice surrounded the combatants. Ooh, he made Naruto ni-san maadddd, said little Hanabi lowly. Inside the ice mirrors, the pervert was dodging the whipping serpentine blade of Kimimaro, desperately trying to tell the boys he was kidding. The dancing blade had already nicked up his clothing horribly, and despite his skill he was having a hard time avoiding it. He had tried to summon a frog to help him out, but Naruto had merged into the ground and was attacking anything he summoned before disappearing again. His thoughts were interrupted when an arm that had popped out of the ground and tripped him up. He recovered in time to dodge another swipe from Kimimaro, though this near miss took a few strands of his hair. He spun around only to find the point of Naruto's Kyusei at his throat. He quickly tried to leap away only to have Kimimaro's Sarame wrap itself around his lower body from waist to ankle. He felt the slight bite of the serrated blade as Kimimaro tightened it, letting the pervert know that a slight tug from Kimimaro is all it would take to see. "Give me a reason not to slit your throat, pervert," stated Naruto coolly. You'd be killing a Sannin," blurted out the pervert, as if asking a question more than giving an answer. "Oh really? You're not a pale, reptilian, homosexual, and you are most definitely not a woman. So you mean to tell me that your Naruto was interrupted by the now confident pervert. The man enemies flee from, and women flock to all throughout the 5 great nations. The Gamma Sennin the Great Jur. Sensatsu Suisho. Ice mirrors fell and a rain of needles flew towards the pervert, striking within centimeters of his body, pinning him to the rooftop via his clothes, terrifying the man into silence. "Look here, Jiraiya hentai. If I catch you peeking on women again, especially if they happen to be friends of mine, I won't miss." Naruto punctuated his statement by flinging 2 senbon needles towards Jiraiya's crotch, missing by a single centimeter. Jiraiya only paled and nodded furiously. After unwrapping Sarame from Jiraiya, Kimimaro and Naruto returned to their post, leaving a pale Sannin pinned to the rooftop. End flashback. Later that night, Jiraiya had made an appearance at the Ryushi Manor. He let Naruto know that he knew his father, though he wouldn't say how. From then on he had quickly become the uncle that no one wants to talk about to Naruto and Kimimaro, with Naruto learning the art of sealing, and Kimimaro learning even more Doton Jutsu from the mighty Toad Sage. Though this uncle-nephew student Sensei bond didn't save Jiraiya from constant beatings at the hands of the brothers for his literary hobbies. Naruto's training in seals with Jiraiya came in handy when one night he had received a letter from Temari stating that Gaara had gone off the deep end after their uncle had tried to kill him. It was in this letter that the blonde daughter of the Kazekage had enlightened Naruto as to her younger brother's status as the container of the Ichibi no Shukaku. Naruto and Jiraiya made the trip to Suna, and after a little talking between Naruto and Gaara, they were able to convince the homicidal redhead to allow Jiraiya and Naruto to attempt to fix the seal. After weeks of researching all the possibilities, Naruto and Jiraiya made their alterations to Gaara's seal. The boy would have to learn how to master control of his sand again, but no longer would the sadistic whispers of the sand demon plague him, and he could now sleep without worry of demonic possession. Afterwards, Naruto and Gaara's friendship was stronger than before, especially when Naruto revealed to Gaara his status as the container for the Kyuubi. Temari for one was thrilled to have her little brother back, and had taken Naruto to the ground in what he could only describe as an Anko-like flying hug. She then proceeded to sob her thanks through tears of joy for the next 25 minutes. All the while snuggling into the 11-year-old Junin's shoulder. The moment was ruined when Jiraiya demanded a similar hug, only to be hit with a fist of sand the size of a small building. After more hugs and promises to keep in touch, the duo of Naruto and Jiraiya left Suna, leaving behind a new Gaara, and a grateful Temari. Another event that occurred, actually had village-wide implications, was the birth of a new division in the shinobi ranks of Konoha. During the 2-year span, more and more happenings involving the police force, at that time being provided by the Uchiha clan, had called their competence into question, the biggest qualm being the mysterious disappearances of shinobi prisoners from their cells. There were never any signs of a crime being committed. If anything, it was like prisoners were simply walking out of jail and disappearing without a trace. Though a few people, such as Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Akahata, and Hyuga Hiyashi, noticed a marked increase in the forces of Danzo's Rudanbu, an increase far too coincidental to be a coincidence. Other reports were simply of random abuses of power, holes in the security of the village, and instances of bribery and corruption. Though many of these incidents were linked directly to Uchiha Fugaku and his cousin Uchiha Daisuke. This prompted the Sarutobi and Akahata to create a new organization to take over policing duties for the village, Tazagare, Twilight Taizagare would be made up of veteran hunter nin, due to their ability to combat ninja of all types. This move was made even more convenient when the latest copy of the bingo book showed that there were less than 25 missing nin of the Leaf Village left. A statistic widely believed to be due to the new level of power achieved by the Hunter Nin Corps as a whole. A rise attributed to Akahata's new mandatory physical and skills benchmark exams. Simply put, the new Hunter Nin General raised the bar in not only what it took to be a Hunter Nin but what it took to stay a Hunter Nin. His reasoning being that Hunter Nin were trained to fight ninja specifically. Any other kind of ninja, including Anbu, took on jobs as guards, escorts, dealing with bandits, and mercenaries. Yes, they did take on enemy ninja, but Hunter Nin dealt with dangerous enemy ninja in an exclusive capacity. As such, the new way of thinking was that Hunter Nin should be able to take down people Anbu couldn't. In fact, the new admittance test was to beat a veteran Anbu member. So due to the new strength of the Hunter Nin Corps and the shortage of actual Konoha missing nin, many Hunter Nin were given promotion into the Taizagare ranks. They served under a group of officers known as Hashiras, Piliers, with Akahata serving as commander in general. Hashiras were to be the elite police presence of the village, the cream of the crop. From the outset, the top Hashiras were Naruto, Kimimaro, Anko, Yugao, Hayate, and surprisingly, Uchiha Itachi. The prodigious Uchiha was the first to apply for a spot in Taizagare despite his father's protest. While the creation of Taizagare was generally praised by the village, it was needless to say that some parties were a little less than pleased. Danzo didn't take too kindly to the fact that Taizagare was welcomed with open arms by the Hokage, while his Root Anbu division fought every day not to get disbanded by the venerable Sandame. The biggest detractor against Taizagare was one Uchiha Fugaku. Make no mistake, many of the Uchiha clan were a little irked at the loss of a job, but they got over it and moved on to joining the shinobi ranks. Fugaku, however, was livid. Not only was his great clan losing more power, but it was being given to the man he despised. It was like there was some conspiracy to make that masked demon lover more powerful and make him weaker. He was the head of the noble Uchiha clan. He deserved that power, he earned it. Then Sarutobi had the nerve to try to assign him a mission. Couldn't the fool see that Fugaku was busy with clan matters? Indeed, the ravings of a power-hungry man who has had his power taken away can be quite mad. Naruto's reminiscing was cut short when Kimimaro walked into his room. Ototo, he's awake. Kimimaro didn't elaborate, he didn't have to. Just yesterday Naruto and Kimimaro had come home to found a severely wounded Uchiha Itachi bleeding on their doorstep. They had quickly moved him inside to be treated by Rin, where he had remained, unconscious for the rest of the night. Without a second thought, Naruto ran into one of the spare rooms where Itachi was being kept. Akahata, Anko, Rin, and Kimimaro were already at his bedside. "Itachi-kun, what happened?" asked Rin softly. Itachi only looked around at his visitors through half-lidded eyes, before mumbling. "Shisui attacked me, needed me out of the way, Uchiha army, Danzo, Orochimaru, children." "Itachi. Come on, focus. Just tell us what happened clearly and then you can go to sleep, okay?" asked Rin. The Uchiha only managed a nod, before taking a deep breath and steeling himself. "I was attacked by my best friend Shisui. When I asked him why, he said that my father had labeled me a traitor to the clan. After I killed him, I went to go see my father, or at least my mother, and Soi what was going on. When I got there, I heard my father talking with Danzo. They were plotting, Plotting what, Itachi? The destruction of the clan. My dad is mad over the formation of Taizagare, and is becoming a paranoid, power-hungry lunatic. He's convinced that there is some huge conspiracy to keep him from the power that he wants and made a pact with Danzo and Orochimaru. Danzo wanted the entire Uchiha clan to join and be trained as Root Anbu. Of course, my mother and the other council members of the Uchiha shot this idea down in a hurry. In fact, there were many rumblings that my father was gonna be removed as clan head. Anyways, from what they were saying, they've decided to kill every Uchiha other than the children. Then they're gonna turn all the children into Root Anbu, creating their own little custom Uchiha army. What about Orochimaru? From what I was able to make out, Orochimaru's going to help with the actual attack, and help Danzo and my father overthrow Konoha when they're ready. Supposedly he gets something he's always wanted, the Sharingan. I don't know how they plan to give him the Sharingan, I just know that it would go a long way in his little fantasy of learning all the jutsus in existence. I left after that and was on my way to inform the Sandaime, when I was blindsided. I was able to kill off my attackers but not without getting pretty badly injured. I thought that I was going to die and I was closer to here than I was the Hokage Tower. So I figured if I could at least inform one of you, I could die knowing I helped. Any idea when they plan to attack? Asked Anko. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, yesterday or tomorrow today? Asked Naruto. What? Asked a confused Itachi. Itachi, you've been out all night, you were attacked yesterday. What? The Uchiha's eyes widened as he struggled to get out of the bed. I gotta go, gotta help them. Itachi was surprised when he was forced back into bed. You're not going anywhere, Itachi. Stated Akahata. I know you want to help them, but going out there half dead will only add to the casualties. We will take care of it. Anko, Naruto, Kimimaro, let's go. Rin, stay here with Itachi. I can help Akahata-kun. Rin growled. I'm not saying you can't, however they obviously want Itachi dead, and in his condition anything over a Chunin will be too much for him. I need you to stay here and watch over him. Got it? He received a terse nod in reply. Okay. Then let's go. Akahata-sama, cried out Itachi. Please, I know this is selfish, but if my mother and little brother are still alive, please, keep them safe. Will do. Akahata raced along the rooftops towards the Uchiha district, leading a group of Anko, Kimimaro, Naruto, and 12 Tazegare patrolmen. One of you go inform Hokage-sama, the rest of you follow me. He waited until one of the faster patrolmen sprinted off towards the Hokage Tower. We have an unknown number of enemies, of skill level anywhere from elite Junin to Sannin attacking the Uchiha clan. We know that Uchiha Fugaku is a co-conspirator in this attack, as well as Orochimaru and Root. Protection of clan members is the priority, especially the children. If you can just run the enemy off, do so. I'd rather have live Uchihas and an escaped enemy than a dead enemy along with an extinct Uchiha clan. Am I clear? Hi, came the resounding response. Quiet. A haunting, bone-chilling silence is what awaited the rescue party as they entered the Uchiha district. Without waiting to be told, Kimimaro and Naruto activated their Kanshikigen. They found sporadic battles around the compound, but what drew their attention immediately was a single building that held at least 50 children. With the children was the infamous snake Sannin Orochimaru, as well as a single Anbu. Without a word to anyone, the two boys dashed off in towards the building. Other members spread out and began taking out pockets of resistance along the way. Anko, seeing her two Ototos going somewhere, decided to follow. Akahata went to make good on his promise to Itachi. Naruto, Kimimaro, and Anko walked into a garage-like building, only to find Orochimaru and his Anbu companion browsing through the gathered children. As soon as they stepped into the large room, the Anbu tensed and Orochimaru turned around with a face of annoyance. His annoyance quickly turned into amusement when he saw his former apprentice standing there. Ah, Anko-chan, it really has been a while. You never write, you never visit. Why, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you didn't like me, said Orochimaru in a tone of mock hurt. You wouldn't be far from the truth, you snake bastard, growled out Anko. You wound me, my dear Anko. What are you doing here? Ah, you see, I've recently perfected that jutsu and I'm in the market for a new body. So you finally finished, you bastard? No matters, I'll kill you here. With that, Anko charged her former sensei. Still as headstrong as always, my foolish student. Kabu, Ki, take out the other two no-names. Your intelligence network is pretty stupid if you don't know who those two are, sensei. Not another word was spoken as the 5 combatants engaged in battle. Akahata landed another satisfying blow upon the Uchiha clan head. Fugaku slid limply on the ground. Still, Akahata had no plans on showing him mercy. He had walked in moments ago to find the dead body of Uchiha Daisuke thrown on the floor, and Fugaku slowly torturing his wife Makoto. On the other side of the room, a barely alive Uchiha Yukiko, Makoto's younger sister, was cradling the injured body of her daughter Yurieko. Fugaku groaned as he rolled to a stop. He had killed Daisuke, the only person he could ever consider to be a good friend, and he had in fact gained the Mangekyo Sharingan. However, this did no good when Akahata wouldn't give him enough time to capture him in the Tsukiyomi. He needed a distraction. Then, as if by divine intervention, his second child, Sasuke, entered the room, eyes glazed in confusion and terror. The deranged clan head smirked. That will work. Naruto smirked. This Kabuki fellow had severely underestimated the two brothers and was now trapped in the Makyu show. Naruto was currently looking on from inside one of the mirrors, while Kimimaro was dicing the anbu with Sarame. The blade danced and thrashed majestically, covering every inch of the enclosed space in deep gashes. Naruto was sure that if he wasn't in the dimension of the ice mirror, he would have been diced by the dancing blade as well. He winced slightly as the black serrated blade caught Kabuki across the chest, only to frown as the wound healed quickly. That healing ability really was a nuisance. If it wasn't for it, Kabuki would have been deceased a long time ago. Not that Naruto was underestimating the anbu, he knew that this Kabuki was capable of putting up a much greater fight. He had, however, gotten a bad draw, as he seemed to be a close-range fighter, and Kimimaro's skill with Sarame would ensure that Kabuki would not get into striking distance of Kimimaro without paying a heavy cost. Add to that the fact that Naruto was ready to cover his Aniki at a moment's notice meant that the anbu was in a very bad position. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by a scream of pain, a familiar scream, Anko Ne-chan's scream. Anko cursed herself mentally. The fight had been going fine. In fact, she had to say that she was holding her own against her sensei. Though it was entirely possible that the snake Sannin was holding back. She had built up a lot of momentum in the fight. She had even managed to bind the Sannin to a support of the garage with her Senaijishu, hidden snake hand. Then when she was about to drive a kunai into the heart of the one who had caused her so much grief, he proved that he was indeed as sneaky and cunning as the animals he was associated with. He pried a single arm loose and sent a large snake at the group of stunned Uchiha children. Anko acted on instinct and jumped in front of the children and into the line of fire of the striking snake. A pained scream tore O Snake's fangs sunk into her shoulder, only to be ground into muffled wheezes as the large snake coiled around her and began constricting. Her eyes blazed with hate as her sensei looked down on her broken form with an amused smirk plastered on his face. Ah, Anko-chan, I must say that you have improved while I was away. It pains me that you didn't have the ambition necessary to serve me. I could have made wonderful use of your power. In your dreams, you bastard, I'll never turn on Konoha. You'd never turn on a village that so willingly turned its back on you. That's admirable, little Anko-chan, foolish, but admirable. Like I care what you think. Oh, and just whose opinion do you care about? I wonder. The Sannin leaned over next to his ex-apprentice's ear. Does little Anko-chan consider Akahata-kun's opinion to be of worth? Yes, I know you do, Anko. Foolish girl, foolish goal. No one will love you, Anko. Much less someone as esteemed as Akahata. What do you have to offer him, you weak and worthless little girl? A tainted body and soul? That's what you want to use to earn the love of someone who is sought after by even my own teammate? Ha! You stupid little girl. Do you want to know what they see when they look at you, Anko? When he looks at you? A pathetic and disgusting shadow of me, Anko. That's what they see. What I see in you, Anko. Despite the years, you are still the weak, stupid, scared, and worthless little girl that I left crying on the floor. The serpent Sannin hissed into the ear of his now sobbing apprentice. Anko knew, she knew that this was all just a part of Orochimaru's mind games. She shouldn't believe a word he says. Still, the words tore at her own festering scars of self-doubt that had been with her ever since Orochimaru turned his back on her. Through her tears, however, she saw a glint in the light, as Naruto crept out of the ground towards the snake Sannin, Kyusei in hand. Orochimaru caught the glint in Anko's eye, when he moved to spin around only to feel a searing pain erupt across his spine. The pain was followed by an intense numbness in his legs as they crumpled underneath him. As he hit the ground, he tried to stand but found that he couldn't move his legs. Then it hit him. He was paralyzed from at least the waist down. He looked up in time to see Naruto's Kyusei begin to come down upon him when the snake that had been constricting Anko lunged at the blonde, only to be beheaded by Naruto. The snake, however, served its purpose as it provided the necessary distraction for Orochimaru to get off a jutsu. Naruto barely had time to turn his attention back to the Rouge Sannin when he was hit by a blast of air, sending him to the ground hard. The blow being enough for him to lose the concentration needed for his ice mirrors, freeing Kimimaro and the still dodging Kabuki. Kabuki! Get me out of here! The Anbu-clad henchman dodged another sweep of Kimimaro's Sarame, and dashed towards the downed Sannin. As soon as he reached Orochimaru, the two were gone in a matter of seconds, swirling leaves, and blood on the floor, the only indication that they were ever there. Akahata cursed the day Uchiha Fugaku was born as a fireball the size of a deer sped at the now scared stiff child. A fireball launched by his father, no less. The boy cried out in surprise when he was thrust out of the way and onto the floor. He turned to see the masked man that had been fighting his dad enveloped in a small explosion. Akahata ground his teeth in pain as the flash from the blast finished, by no means meaning an end to the pain. His hatred had renewed for the scum that had launched a fireball at his own son, planned the death of another, tortured his own wife, killed off his own clan, and conspired the downfall of his own village. He glared at the man with all the hate he could muster, a mistake he would come to regret. Fugaku inwardly smirked as he and Akahata locked eyes. Before the masked nin could realize his mistake, the words of the fallen Uchiha clan head reached his ears. Tsukiyomi. Sasuke watched on as the man who had been fighting his father let out some quick snarls of pain before collapsing in a heap. The boy then watched on as his father made to leave the room. Fugaku stopped at the door, his back still turned on the carnage he created, and addressed his son. Sasuke. I know you want to know why I did what I did, and I'll tell you. They are afraid of us, Sasuke. Of the power the Uchihas rightfully deserve. We should be gods to these people and they hold us back. Even members of our own clan. They're afraid of us, Sasuke, of the power we contain. Did you ever wonder why Itachi never wanted to train you, or why your mother demanded that you get to lead a normal life? Fear. Fear of their own weakness. They'll try to hold you back like they did me, Sasuke, when you've realized this, and you want to achieve the power you so rightfully deserve. Find me. With that said, Uchiha Fugaku disappeared from the village hidden in the leaves. It would be 10 more minutes before the Sandaime and a small army of Junin and Anbu would descend upon the chaos of the Uchiha compound. Once there, they would find the entirety of the adult population of the Uchiha clan, save for Makoto, Yukiko, and Itachi, dead. The children of the clan were found safe under the vigilant gaze of a distraught Anko, frustrated Naruto, and thoughtful Kimimaro. The bodies of about 50 mystery ninja were found throughout the compound, victims of the cold efficiency of Tazegare. When the searches finally led the Sandaime into the private office of Fugaku Uchiha, he would find a critically wounded Makoto and Yukiko, an awake but clearly traumatized Yurieko, a shocked yet thoughtful Sasuke. What he didn't find, that was until the desperate cry of Anko and Naruto pierced the air from the other side of the room, was a deeply comatose Akahata Ryushi. Thanks for watching.